take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riz Scala, every Saturday night on the LNM Network from 9 p.m. to midnight. And now your host, Riz Scala.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill.
All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. It is the Red Pill Reality Show, an honor and a privilege to have you tune in and listen. We're going to have another very important show tonight. I have some guests on. We're going to be discussing what we can do about this madness that we're witnessing today. I really don't even know where to start. Truly, it is insanity what I'm witnessing that is going on. It's really scary when you understand that there are people that are supposed to be representatives of ours that can literally make up stories and drag you through the legal process and have you be found guilty in the courts of public view when you've really done nothing wrong. If they can do that to the President of the United States, imagine what they can do to you and me. And they want to disarm us. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. But sadly, even with everything that happened in Virginia, I hear numbers of 10,000 upwards to 60,000 people showed up in Virginia. Even with however many numbers of people that showed up, even with 90 out of 95 counties, they're still passing laws. So hopefully I'm going to get some more information from some of the people there in Virginia with regard to what's happening there. It's disgusting. It's not just happening in Virginia. You know, I've said this over and over. Virginia is the litmus test. It's going on here in Florida, where I'm at. I'm in South Florida, but all of Florida is experiencing these red flag laws. The last show that, if you didn't hear the last show, was a nightmare for a gentleman who suffered the wrong end of a red flag law. Unjustifiably the wrong end of a red flag law. Someone who was a previous law enforcement agent. Someone who's all he did is doing his job. He was a process server. I don't know if he still is, but at the time when all that happened, he was a process server. He's the man that goes out and hands you the subpoena. He's typically not he's not a law enforcement in any way. All he wants to do is hand you a piece of paper and leave you alone. And for that, somebody decided to file a report against him, and before he knew it, a SWAT team showed up at his house. It was a nightmare. You've got to go listen to the story. It's an absolute nightmare. A total circumvention of the system that we're supposed to be living under. Again, more evidence that we are living under a system that was not intended for us by the Founding Fathers. The insanity that you are witnessing, there is a reason why these people are able to get away with these. You know, I used to shake my head going, what is the hell is the matter with these people? How can they get away with this stuff? Well, if you understand that we're not under the system that you think we are, that's how they can get away with it. They clearly don't abide by the Constitution when the Constitution says infringe it. You think they... What a joke. What a laugh. Really, it's heartbreaking because many people are deceived. Many people really don't understand. Hopefully tonight we'll bring a little bit more understanding as to why this is going on. What options do we have? We have a president who is going through an impeachment trial for supposedly creating a situation where another leader of another country was to perform a favor for him. Otherwise, the president was not going to provide them with whatever it was that it was money and weapons, I think, or one of the two or both, I'm not sure. None of that happened. But yet we have spent, I don't know, the Mueller thing, that was what, 40 some odd million? The numbers are up and down everywhere. The last number I heard was about 40 million, 2.75 years. And then this impeachment, the 70 some odd day impeachment, how many thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars did that cost? And now we're into this final segment of the impeachment. How much more money does that cost? We have a dipstick who is out there buying $15,000 worth of pens so she can give away souvenirs that she signed off on the impeachment papers. Meanwhile, we have a president who signs $1 billion deal with a dollar Sharpie. This is the difference in the kind of people that we need. But the problem is, regardless if we have the right people, we have the system that is not intended to be the way it was when it was designed. Until we can fix that, we can have all the right people in the world. It's just not going to mesh correctly. It's like gears coming together, and you have that one proverbial gear that's missing, just a part, not the whole tooth, just a part of it, and every time it comes around, it hiccups. No matter what you do, no matter how you oil it, no matter how much grease you add, no matter what you do, until you fix that, you're going to have that hiccup, and that's what we have today. But unfortunately, it's a lot more than a hiccup. It affects every one of our lives. It's a game of chess. And sadly, it's a game played with people's lives. And by design, I believe this 100%, by design, it is intended to be that way. People have been dumbed down for God knows how long. I have no idea what they're spraying on us every day anymore. I mean, I've seen the reports, I saw the data from years ago, but I don't know if that's still what they're doing. I've heard all kinds of crazy things. Live viruses, different kinds of vaccines, inhalable, and what are they called? Kind of vaccines that you can inhale. I can't remember the term, but who knows what the heck they're spraying on us? You know, we call the state that I'm in is supposed to be the Sunshine State. Well, let me tell you something. There's rapidly changing that. It's more like the gray state, the gray sky state. Gray, Gray, sky state. Because that's what happens. It starts out in the morning, nice and clear, beautiful blue sky. I walk my dog every morning. Thank God that I do that. I probably wouldn't be here if I didn't do that, because I had a heart situation last year, and the doctor said if you weren't exercising, you would have probably died in your sleep. So every morning, 7 days a week, I walk my dog. Some days longer than others, but on the average, it's about an hour, somewhere around 3 miles, sometimes 3.25 for really hustling. And I start out and it's nice and clear, and by the time I'm done, before that hour's over, I can see these rat you-know-what spraying the skies. And gradually the sky before the end of the day is gray. And sadly, people have no idea that this is going on. They thought this is normal. I see that they're putting it in commercials. I don't watch TV, but I do see video clips, and when I visit one of my kids or something, they got the TV on. I see it's even in movies now. Chemical trails. There's nothing natural about these trails, people. They're trying to convince you that there's nothing wrong with these trails. It's an absolute lie. We have no idea what is going on. We have no idea what they are spraying on us. It could be, I mean, I've heard anything from, viruses, live viruses. I've heard blood. I don't know how true any of this is, but this is something. I've heard drugs. I've heard that on an audio of some officials. I don't remember whether it was NASA or someone like that. Lithium being sprayed over the public out of one of these rockets. Lithium. Why? Fluoride in our water. Did you know that fluoride is a documented neurotoxin? Documented that fluoride, the kind of fluoride that is in our water, is a known brain poison. Yep, there it is. And we're not. Are you told? Did they have your permission to fluoridate your water? You're buying water from the utilities that is poisoning you. So basically, you're buying to kill yourself. This goes on. There's so many areas in life that this goes on. And sometimes I find myself just really upset with people. And I find myself upset with me. Why do I have to know? It bugs the snot out of me. Why is it that I have to know this? Because once I know, I have this burning desire, I don't know how to describe it, responsibility, I don't know, to tell other people that maybe they're not doing anything about it because they don't know. Well, sadly, a lot of them know, and they still don't care. It's sad. And again, I don't know where to put the blame. I know that there is a system in place purposely dumbing people down so that when they're approached with a subject that doesn't flow with their life experience, they shut down. They just, it's kind of like a deer in the headlights. They're there, but they won't get out of the way. They don't have common sense to move. You start talking to them about these things, and they don't have the common sense to think for themselves and go, I wonder. Just put a question mark. Try to get an idea into their mind about, is there any possible way that what you're thinking could be wrong? But they've been conditioned or indoctrinated, however you want to call it, so strongly that you might as well go speak to the wall. You'd probably get better results with the wall than you would with some of these people. And that makes it very dangerous for our society because some of these people, unfortunately, are in places of our government. They do not see America the way I see America. I would hope that you would see America in the same way, and the way that I see America is to abide by the rules of the game, if you will, that you and I have inalienable rights. That means that nobody can take these rights away from us. God gave us these rights. That no man has the authority, there's the key word, no man has the authority to remove those rights from you. Now, they may have the power, unfortunately, because that's what's happening today. We have a government that has gone rogue. You'd have to be sleeping under a rock not to recognize what has happened just within the last couple of months. Our government is literally imploding before our eyes. We have a group of people who is blaming the president for something that the president didn't do. They are so staunchly stuck on, I'm trying to use the nice words, stuck on this, that even when they are caught lying, they continue to double down on the lies. Now, somewhere along the line, this is all has to come to a head. It has to. Imagine how much this president has achieved with all of the efforts that these people have put in to stopping him. Imagine now if we have these people gone and out of the way and people who are interested in what is best for our country. Now, having said all of that, and even if we're successful at doing all of that, we still got that one little piece of tooth in that gear that has to be fixed. There's no way around that. How many times have you heard me, if you've listened to my show? We must find out as best as we can what happened in 9/11. Why? Because everything that we're living under today is because of 9/11. And if 9/11 is a lie, hello, then there is no bearing to have all of these things that have been put in place, all of these thefts that have occurred since then, all of the people that have been classified as terrorists because they want nothing more than our representatives to abide by the rules. All of that would be null and void if 9/11 was a lie. We deserve to know the truth. We are involved in how many wars now? Why? Because I believe, my opinion is, there was a need for us to go to war by a certain group of people, not by our country, not by the general public of the United States, not by the citizenry, but by just a small group of people who could benefit financially, tremendously, if we would go to war. And so they arranged an event, as they call it, to occur that would cause the nation to come together under a common goal with a common enemy. Well, we already had the enemy in place. We called it terror. So there's no face on it. You see how they do that? There's no name, there's no face, it's just terror. A war on terror. A war on drugs. The war on drugs is nothing more than a war on the people. Turning law-abiding citizens into felons for nothing more than having a plant, for God's sake. The war on terror. No names, no faces. Just a nice, broad, general term. That way we can go attack whoever the hell we want. And, hey, it's the war on terror. It's just like the war on drugs. We kick your door in, we blow your house up. Hey, it's the war on drugs. What's the problem? So they use these terms that kind of give you an acceptable feeling about what's going on. And this has been going on for a very long time. I found out a while back, which shocked me, that our nation was overthrown in the late 1800s. I had no clue about that. I didn't know anything about that. But through a friend of mine who introduced me to this other friend who introduced me to another friend who gave me a you-know-what pile load of information, a DVD that I watched, I'll be the third time now, just so full of information about what happened. And it's all documented. And why we should be in a different status than we are today. We shouldn't be, American citizenship shouldn't be the priority citizenship. And there's a reason for that. And hopefully we're going to get into that tonight. And explain to you why these insane people can get away with what they get away with. Clearly we're not represented anymore. I mean, I'd like to find somebody who would argue that fact with me. Do you honestly feel that the people that we have, who in their right mind goes out and spends $15,000, that was the last number I heard anyway, $15,000 on pens, gold-plated pens, so that they can sign a piece of paper and then give the pens away to their pals. Does that represent something you would do? They spend money like a drunken sailor, but even a drunken sailor has more responsibility. At least the drunken sailor earned whatever they spent. These people don't earn any of this stuff. They just spend it freely. And 15,000, I got news for you. 15,000 is not even a nail clip. A blink of an eye with these people. Hundreds of thousands of dollars for one particular travel that this person took. It was almost $200,000 in costs because she needed to go fly somewhere. Of course, she takes a military aircraft and utilizes the entire aircraft for herself. Does that represent you? I mean, would you do something like that? Now, if it was official business, you can classify anything as official business, but if it was truly official business, something that was in, really need of the country, then maybe. If your life was in danger for some reason, you couldn't fly commercial, yeah. But this is done on a regular basis with these people. It's like, I'm going to drive to the store. I'm going to go, hey, crank up the jet. We're going to go fly to wherever. Truly is sad. We don't have representation anymore. We haven't had representation in quite some time. And many people are frustrated, like I am. And many of the people I speak with feel the same as I do, extremely frustrated at what's going on. Tired of watching our government literally implode. It's just imploding. There's no other way to describe it. You have one side fighting the other, and it's almost a 50-50 fight. That's the scary part. I never thought that, when they decided to vote on the impeachment, that it would be, if it was 51-49 or something like that? My gosh. I thought it would be a lot better than that, but heck no. These people have gone absolutely insane, and you and I are the ones at the end of it all. Now, there's a way that we can put an end to this insanity. But the very first step that we must take is to accept that we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to those who have dedicated and shed their blood in the belief that they were fighting for something that you and I were free to be doing different things. And all around us, we see the freedom being shut down. And at least my experience of things going on, I see very little people speaking up. I see any kind of speech that would further hate and that would further devise us is promoted. Any kind of speech that speaks against that and says that we need to be together on this is censored. And people are not standing up to it. And that disturbs me. All right, going to take a break. I got a call. I'll be with the call in just a moment. Hang in there with me. We're going to take a break. You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show. Tonight I'm going to have a couple of guests on with me. Hopefully somebody from Virginia, maybe a couple of people from Virginia if we get lucky, and give us an update as to what happened in Virginia. If you don't know what happened in Virginia, you'll find out tonight. You'd have to be sleeping under a rock. This is a tremendous thing that went on in Virginia, and the return of all of that was literally a slap in the face. Slap in the face. And I'll get more into that shortly here. Here we go.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show on the LNM Network. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
Grace has some pretty stellar arms, like Serena Williams good, but her face is pretty disgusting.
Someone please tell him to go back into his closet and leave us alone.
Brittany's face is so stupid, and I hate her so much. It's like a scientist created her in a lab to annoy humanity and didn't even do that good of a job.
Megan reminds me of a troll doll that came to life intent on killing us with her stupidity.
Why is Grace's head so big? It definitely has nothing to do with how smart she is and probably everything to do with how bloated she is.
He's so funny. Just kidding. Who would find this disfigured flamingo funny?
Never post a selfie of yourself. You look so ugly.
The only reason you have so many views is because we think you're a freak and we can't look away.
Megan is the main reason that the world sucks so much.
I would rather get cancer than listen to another Trevor Moran song.
You are a mistake. You should have never been born.
Drown yourself in a shallow puddle, please.
Wow, I hope she's sterile.
These really stopped being funny a long time ago.
You're so much more than the things that people say about you.
Those people have no right to say cruel things to you to make themselves feel better.
It's okay that you sound different than everyone else.
That's what makes you so special.
We will not tolerate it.
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 Every day, people make me feel like I stand out simply because of the way that I look.
Every day people make me feel small.
Every day I face the cruel words of bullying.
And every day people tell me that I'm brave for enduring this humiliation.
But we're not the brave ones.
It's the ones that say no to the bullying.
The witnesses.
And if we all join together, there's nothing that we can't do. We will no longer be the silent majority.
When we see bullying online,
We will let the world know that we're going to take action with the eye.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
Our actions will overpower cruel words.
I am a witness.
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 There is power in words.
But it's nothing compared to the power of the actions that we put behind our words.
Visit eyewitnessbullying.org to learn more.
I am a witness, and so are you.
I'm gonna stand by you.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
We have ignition. Strap in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin.
All right, we are back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. I am your host, Riscalo. You are listening to us live. It is, what is today? Saturday. Saturday, the 1st of February. And we are transmitting out of South Florida, Palm Beach County, South Florida to be precise. We'll be opening up the lines here shortly for those of you who wish to call in. Right now, I've got a couple of callers. I see David is on the line with me. I have area code 408. I'm not sure who that is. Let me get to 408 first. Area code 408. Who is this?
My name's Ken.
Hey, Ken. How are you?
Oh, pretty good, Riscala. It's been a while since I called your show, and it's good to talk to you again.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Are you in California? I don't recall speaking with you, but I vaguely remember speaking with you.
No, I'm an ex-Californian. I
Yeah.
live in Arizona now.
Yeah, that's what it is. All right, and you have a question or comment?
Yes, I do. Riscala, I was listening to a show about a couple weeks ago, and the gentleman, I forget who it was, but he mentioned something about the United Nations was hiring people. Now, I went to the United Nations website, and I looked under the employment. I couldn't find it myself. Maybe it's no longer there. But they were hiring people to assist ATF to go down into Virginia, house to house, and confiscate weapons. Now, the thing that really concerned me the most is that this idiot governor down there in Virginia what he's doing is unconstitutional. It is clear as night and day, and yet the UN's getting involved in our internal policies, and they're backing an unconstitutional format. I mean, it's just appalling.
Well, what you're seeing is what I've kind of been alluding to. We've done, I think we're on 11 shows now about this particular subject. What has happened, to you and me, prior to the knowledge that I have gained here through some very precious friends of mine, I would say, like you're saying, how the hell are these people getting away with this? This is against everything that we stand for. So how in the world can they get away with it? Well, they get away with it because the system has been corrupted. The system is not under the guise, if you will, of the way it was intended to be by the founding fathers. And we're going to be talking about that. I've got a couple of people who are going to be telling us a little bit more about that tonight. But basically, the reason that they're able to get away with it is that we've been deceived. That's the easiest and simplest way I can put it to you. We have been lied to, and it's pretty evident. I mean, you can see, like you're saying, this governor has completely gone off his rocker. He is attempting a total disarmament. On top of that, I've heard from as little as 10,000, as many as 60,000 people showed up for that rally in Virginia. Yet they continue to pass, from what I understand, and I'm hoping to hear from someone in Virginia, they're continuing to pass laws that are restricting gun rights. So they don't represent you and me. They have no authority to do what they're doing, but they have the power, and therein lies the problem. The power is supposed to be with you and me, the people, and it has not been that way for a very long time. And until we rectify what has been wronged, we'll continue to see these insane things happening and wonder and shake our heads and go, how in the hell are they getting away with this? Because we have been deceived. That's really the best way. If you listen into the show tonight, you'll see, you'll hear what I believe is the reason that this is going on, and how one of the things that we can do legally without violence, one of the things that we can do to rectify this situation, this corrupt system. Because the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about things like this is the word violence. Well, we're not talking about anything like that at all. We're talking about a legal motion that we can set in place that would separate us from this corrupt system, literally separate us from the system. Now, the disadvantage of that is, as it's a grassroots system, there's not a whole lot of people in it. But the more people we get into it, the more people who are united for it, the faster it will grow, the faster it will become accepted, the faster we will have what we want. And that would be, in my opinion, a balance. We don't have a balance anymore. It hasn't been a balance in a very long time. And that's one of the basic things that was intended by the founding fathers of this land, that there would be a balance, that the government, if there were to be fear anywhere in the equation, it would be the government in fear of the people. We don't have that. We have the people in fear of the government, and as a result of that, you have tyranny, you have fascism, you have everything but freedom. You have to ask permission for just about anything nowadays, even to go to the bathroom sometimes. So that's what we're up against.
Well, Rascal, look what Thomas Jefferson said. The blood of tyrants will nourish the tree of liberty.
And isn't it ironic? Have you seen the flag of Virginia?
No, I haven't.
The flag of Virginia, there is I don't know if it's a Spaniard, but it's somebody holding a sword with kind of that kind of costume on that get up. It kind of looks like, I think, from memory, I may be wrong, but somebody holding a sword, standing on with their foot on the neck or the head of somebody, and said, basically, we're not standing for tyranny. I don't remember the exact words, but something like that. So, yeah, they're up against tyranny themselves, and the very flag says, we will not stand for it. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens coming up here. Anything else you want to add, Ken, before I bring the other guests on?
Yes, sir. I'd like to add one more thing. Our Democrats, or I guess our commie Dems, are trying to push a bill through legislation to fund the chemtrails.
Well,
right now.
The information that I have about chemtrails is they've been funded for quite some time. Most of it is being done through the military, and I don't recall the particular. Yeah, I don't recall what they call it, but it's most of it is being done through the military at this point.
Well, a lot of it's being done also by private funding, especially with the Gates Foundation.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Not the chemtrail. I know the Gates Foundation is heavily involved in vaccines, but I wasn't aware of the chemtrails.
Oh, that too. You know, he wants his population decreased one way or another. Trying to kill the skies. Yeah. In fact, here in Arizona, I used to see a lot of blue skies, beautiful blue skies.
Yeah.
And now you can get up in the morning, walk your dog, go fishing, whatever, and by the time you come home in the afternoon, there's a silver tint all around our blue sky.
Yeah, we're suffering the same thing in South Florida, almost identical. I get up in the morning, I walk my dog, it's nice and clear. By the time I get home, it's already starting. The lines in the sky are no longer lines; they're now wide and getting wider by the moment. And by the time 1 or 2 o'clock rolls around, the skies are basically gray. What's worse is days like today where we've had overcast, and I know they're spraying us because during the brief moments of openings, I can see it. I can see it up there. So it brings it down even faster when they're doing stuff like that. All right, Ken. Well, I appreciate your call, my friend. Anything else you want to add before I head on to our guests?
No, well, just one more quick thing, Priscilla.
Sure.
I told my wife, I said if something erupts in Virginia, I'm gonna go down and back them up because this might be the shot heard around the world, and it's a fight for not only Virginia but a fight to save our country.
That's absolutely true. Yep, it is a litmus test, as I call it, and it's already starting here in Florida. What they're doing in Virginia is already starting here in Florida, and it's pretty disturbing. All right, my friend, I wish you well. Thank you so much for taking the time to call in. God bless you, and I hope you listen in, and you'll have some more information coming up tonight.
Yes, thank you, Riscala.
All right, Ken, thank you.
Bye now.
All right, let me bring on David. Hello, David.
Riscala, hi. Good evening, and I'm glad to be visiting with you. It's been good information so far.
Well, thank you. And I think I have Milo. I think, let me see who this is. All right, area code 704.
That would be me. How are you, Riscala?
Good, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And I think we may hear from Chrissy here shortly. She said she's going to do her best to call in. I know she's not feeling too good, but hopefully we'll get an update with what's happened in Virginia. Now, am I right? I read a couple of articles that said they're still attempting to pass, and some of the laws have actually already passed. Of course, they've been, quote, watered down, but anything is wrong anyway. Am I right about that? Have you guys heard the same, that they're continuing? It didn't matter?
That is correct. I went and read a report. I'm trying to pull it up now. In Virginia, the title, it's an ABC News report from the 30th. Gun control bills passed Virginia despite show of force from opponents. And I believe 5 of the bills have passed. The ones that have passed, the House of Delegates approved 7. The curbing of gun violence through universal background checks, monthly limit on handgun purchases, the red flag law, which definitely was passed. I'm just looking here.
And what a nightmare, the red flag law.
Yeah.
What an absolute nightmare.
You know, it's because there's arguments that are being put out there that is actually going to reduce suicide. But what seems to be the case from one report I'd read from one legislator is that it reduces the suicide by guns, but it increases suicide by other methods because you don't have guns. So it levels out to about the same, because people are going to find a way to kill themselves if they want to kill themselves. It's just the way it is.
Let me make a statement, and I'll ask Milo to respond first, and then I'll go to you, David. It doesn't matter how many laws you pass. If somebody is hell-bent, and when I say this, I know this from personal experience, so I want to find out if you two, whether you agree or disagree with this statement. If someone is hell-bent on killing themselves, they will find a way, even if it's with a freaking rock, What do you feel about that? How do you feel about that, Milo?
I agree with you in general theory. I mean, if someone, I've known a couple of people in my life who have committed suicide by firearm, literally like a couple.
As I have as well.
And but I've known other people as well that, they had access to firearms, but their go-to method, what they chose to attempt suicide with, was actually something entirely different and non-firearm related. So, yeah, absolutely.
So I think that if they're of the state of mind that they no longer wish to live, a firearm may be easier in some cases for them, but banning the firearm is certainly not going to stop them. I mean, to think that, I think, is a foolish thought. David, your input.
It's an excuse.
Dave?
Yeah, I think that it's clear that the person that's going to commit suicide has an emotional initiative, an emotional motive that goes way beyond the means by which they will kill themselves. And I have personal experience with people that I've known that were they had strategies as to how they were going to kill themselves, and they had nothing to do with having any kind of a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, pistols are used most of the times for these kinds of events, and yet the gun control advocates are banning
after the rifles.
assault weapons for the purposes of killing, more than any other.
Crazy.
And the whole thing is just a serious issue in many respects. For instance, let's go back to Ken's comment. He made a comment that I wanted to address on a totally different vein from what we're talking about here, but I think it's an important point in terms of one aspect that I believe we need to have in the conversation, and that is even having access to information to make proper decisions. He talked about the fact that a couple of weeks ago somebody made a comment about the United Nations was going to be hiring some people in the UN in New York to oversee
I saw
the whole
something
thing.
like that as well.
However,
Yep.
I've got a very good friend who's a former F-4 fighter pilot who stays on top of a lot of that, and that may be misinformation. In fact, there are some threads on Facebook where that story was taken down because it was found to be false.
Mm-hmm.
However, what he pointed out is that the reason that there's United Nations people involved is because there were some
I know you
MRAP
MRAPs.
vehicles,
MRAPs.
Yeah, MRAP being sent over to Africa by the United Nations. They're being manufactured, and he actually shared with me, and I was trying to find the reference to the company that is manufacturing these vehicles, and then they're being put on a train and shipped down to somewhere in Virginia where they're sent off to overseas, and it's a valid contract of the United States government, Department of Defense.
There are several areas around the United States where there's UN vehicles and a variety of equipment like that is stored.
It's being manufactured here, and then so he pointed out we got to be careful about the extrapolations going on. I agree with him, but here's the problem: we don't have the access to information because there's not a mechanism for that information to be available to the common American citizen in order to be able to know what we ought to know
that's
as the
by
sovereign
design.
of this country.
Yeah, that's by design. Hang on a minute, David. I want to welcome Chrissy. Chrissy's on the line. Welcome, Chrissy.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine. Milo, can you hear okay?
Hey, guys.
Milo, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear.
Okay, and David, you can hear?
Loud and clear.
All right. Chrissy, can you give us an update? Anything you can tell us about? Chrissy's in Virginia, by the way, those of you who are listening.
Yeah, well, we're still, plucking away in the same direction as we were a couple weeks ago. It is my understanding we actually have a bunch more bills that are coming up. I think like 10 of them that are coming up for...
Holy smokes.
Yeah, the Senate Judiciary Committee on Monday. I don't know that some of them are new, or some of them have, I don't know if they're new or if they've already been here, but they're just making their way, continuing to make their way through the process. Obviously, nothing has been officially passed yet. I think possibly the red flag law might have been, but it's really disheartening, what's happening here, because I mean, we had 30,000+ people show up to Richmond, and the long and the short of it is they, our legislators and our representatives and everybody else, they really just don't care. They're just going to keep going at this point, and I think people are starting to really lose heart, here in Virginia.
Do you think that it'll reach a point where they say, okay, this is enough, and they take action? I'm not talking necessarily violence, but at least some kind of legal action to remove these people? You think it'll ever get to that point?
I think it will. I think Amanda Chase, I think is her name, the representative's name out here that's working on the recall, and that is moving in a forward direction. Last I checked, she had an update, I believe, last night, and I think potentially a Democrat actually might be joining her in those in that regard. So
I read
it is
that.
moving.
I read somewhere a senator had.
Yeah, she's a senator.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Senator. I'm sorry.
Yeah, she had
Yeah,
requested.
Senator Amanda Chase, yeah.
She had requested his resignation. Wanted him to resign.
She has.
Yeah.
She
Good.
has. But there's also a recall that's working. So I believe we have to obviously get a certain amount of support for that. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get all those. I believe you have to get a certain amount of signatures for those types of recalls. But I feel like we're still in limbo. Like we don't really know what direction this is going to take, good or bad. And I think what's really crazy is that everything was at a really big high, and now we're seeing it kind of die down, if that makes sense. People were really excited about what was happening. They're motivated. They're, ready to, go out there and fight. But now it's like, it's really at a mellow tone, I feel like. And I don't want to say people are giving up, but I don't know how motivated they are, to be honest. You have the ones that are really just, they're bold and they're out there. And then you have the larger group, I think they're like, I don't know. So
it seems
we'll
like
what
you're describing seems like the loss of stamina. Would that be a
right?
Yeah.
Right. That's a good description.
Wow.
So
and that's
maybe
really
a little bit of hopelessness mixed in there,
And I think that is almost by design in and of itself. That these people know, all right, well, let them have their day, if you will, and then as soon as their day is over, we'll just go right back and up the tailpipe again.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the whole rally was just you go there, you get your participation badge, and then everybody goes home, and that's kind of what I was afraid of. It's when people start coming from different states. That's great. They want to be here to support us, but the reality is that we need people in our state, that are Virginians, to step up and say, okay, we're not going to let this happen. And how effective they're going to be at that at this point, I'm not even sure.
My concern here is that clearly those who have the weapons, those who own the weapons, and I'm just guessing at this point, but I think it would be relatively accurate. I'm sure that well over 90% of the people who own weapons own them legally right now. And what is happening is that these people will be turned into criminals.
Oh yeah,
by these decisions. And then these people who have now been turned into criminals have a decision to make. Do I want to give up the right to defend myself, my God-given right to defend myself, or do I want to be a criminal? And if I am a criminal, that means I don't have to obey these laws that they're passing down on me, and I will fight for these laws, and the end result will be bloodshed. And that's really my concern, because I see both sides. This governor is just, he's hell bent. I don't see any.
Oh yeah.
I don't see any deviation from him in continuing this I don't know what you want to call it, this effort to continue the disarming of the people. And I see.
Well, it's an assault. It's an assault, is what it is, and he's relentless.
And
he's getting everybody to believe that he's doing the right thing. Like he's selling to people, oh, these things are passing, and they're not really even passed yet. So he's I feel like he's feeding people's minds already to
wow.
I don't know if you want to call it conditioning or something like that, but getting them ready for what's going to happen. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, because, like you said, it's either bloodshed or, physically removing these people from office. And that's the scary part. It's like, okay, when it really comes down to it, are Virginians capable of doing that? And I don't know.
I say this is a litmus test. Okay, let me go over to Milo. Milo, what are your thoughts about what we just said?
Well, I know that Chrissy has not been feeling well for the last week, but
I hope you're feeling better, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
My first question would actually be, has there been any increased interest, or has there been any effort for ramping up outreach in terms of what you and others in your in your group, the VAR, have been working on? Anything at all?
Well, Virginia American Republic keeps, trudging along. We're trying to get all of our paperwork done and finished. And unfortunately, it's a big task, and we are trying to get it done. Outside of that, I haven't seen much from I think even these counties forming militias has even kind of died down, unless it's been something that's been able to be kept off of Facebook, which they may have been doing, but other than that, I haven't seen. Like I said, I've seen the momentum just kind of die down. It's kind of astonishing, because these groups, some of these Facebook groups, were really active, and then it went to a low. And it's like you'll see somebody just post random stuff here and there. Even on the VCDL page, they keep that updated. And it's good to keep updated on their page, and because they're really on top of like the laws and what's passing and what's not. But other than that, I personally have not seen any type of action beyond what was taking place,
right.
before the rally.
Well, that's kind of natural, though. I mean, under the circumstances, the rally was sort of the first big hurrah, and
sure,
I'm looking for a silver lining here, because I don't want people to get depressed, and I certainly don't want them to get caught in this sort of self-fulfilling sort of feedback loop of, oh, it's depressing, and everybody's just kind of laying down supinely, and then all of a sudden that just encourages more people to say, well, I don't have my buddies standing up beside me anymore, so I might as well give up too. I mean, that's a real danger, and it's something that everyone in Virginia should be aware of and take precautions against. But I'm thinking, like I said, I know you haven't been feeling well, and I know your group is small, and you're right, reestablishing a de jure state, getting all of the paperwork in order and doing the research is an enormous task. So you're certainly not wrong about that.
Yeah,
but
VAR is still, we're very hopeful.
I'm thinking, that there's a possibility here to take this lull as an opportunity to reach out to people. And, this is kind of getting into a little bit of business that we might not really want to discuss on Riscala's show, because it might not make good radio. But, if we could talk about that a little bit more later on, perhaps, if we can kind of get back into the swing of it. And
we definitely will.
Again. So
it might confuse everybody here, but Yeah, no,
Yeah,
we definitely do. We're hopeful. VAR is always hopeful because we're going at this a completely different, way than everybody else is. We can see that these people aren't listening to these crowds. We're not being listened to at all. So for us, we're hopeful in that we have a remedy to these things. Now, getting it out to the people in a manner that's uneasy to understand is an entirely different beast,
That's true. That is true. Nevertheless, it is the task at hand as far as I see it. So I don't know.
Definitely.
I mean, David, do you have any questions for Chrissy or any comments?
Well, I would just like to follow up on a few things. And Chrissy, being out of the loop with your being a little under the weather might have, made it so that some of the things that are happening weren't able to be found. But for instance, I've been doing some research this afternoon in preparation for tonight's show on what's been going down, and I found an article from Channel 13. Looking to see where Channel 13, Richmond, which says that 7 out of the 8 bills that the governor proposed have actually passed both the House and the Senate.
Did they? Okay. I haven't. I've been out.
As of the 30th, the only
Okay.
one that didn't pass, which is kind of interesting, is the one that was going to deal with the proposed assault weapon ban, and it looks like that one the Senate has pulled back on their bill. And in this article says that probably won't get passed because there's not enough support even from the Democrats on that at the moment. But the bills that have gone through, there's I'm trying to find. I've got several things opened, so I'm moving through my computer while I'm talking with you. But there's a description of the general idea of what these bills were. Some bullet points that's in this article that I'm reading, and it gives a listing of the major components of them. One of them has to do with that children are not going to be allowed to. Let's see. It says punishment for allowing access to loaded unsecured firearms by a child from a Class 3 misdemeanor to a Class 6 felony raises the age of the child from 14 to 18. There's legislation that enables localities to enact any firearms ordinances that are stricter than the state law, including regulating firearms in municipal buildings, libraries, and at permitted events. That one apparently passed. Legislation that prohibited all individuals subject to final protective order from possessing firearms. That's the red flag law. That was passed by both houses.
Okay, that's what I heard.
It's funny because that's actually part of it, and then there's another piece that the actual extreme risk protective order, which is what the red flag bill is, really, that was passed. That Virginia is going to require only allow one handgun purchase within a 30-day period. And that apparently was a law that was rescinded in 2012 and is being brought back. And then the other is that background checks on all firearm sales and transactions. And so those are the ones that apparently have just went through. They haven't been signed by the governor apparently yet. They're probably going through committee at the moment to get out any differences in wording through usually that's what happens. They go through a committee that kind of deals with the issues that aren't exactly the same, and then it goes to a final version that goes to probably that's where things are at.
Right.
So,
I apologize. I guess I should have said they hadn't been signed into law yet was more my point.
Yeah.
But yes, you're correct.
Yeah. So anyway, it still comes back to this question of that I think is really where I'm excited. It's kind of funny. Maybe it's just that I tend to be optimistic. I call myself cautiously hopeful. What I see here is what's going on in Virginia, which is about to roll out to over 20 other states, literally within the next few weeks, is a raised awareness in the minds of many people in this country that our civil government is not our friend anymore. And that they are doing some things that are showing their true position, showing the true cards of where I call it the oligarchy is wanting to take us. And that is, in my opinion, good news, because the blinders are being removed. Our eyes are becoming opened. We're beginning to understand that something stinks in Denmark, as the saying used to be, right? We're not any longer under this illusion that things are going to continue status quo. They're going to continue in a positive direction, and it's going to force us to realize the circumstances we're in, where we really are in our country today. What is exciting to me is not that, because that's not good news. But in order to really deal with a problem, like for instance, if you want to solve the problem of a cure for the common cold, you have to have a common cold. You know what I'm saying? If we want to deal with a solution to issues, we have to first have an issue that needs a solution. And as we all know that are on this call, there is a lot of time and effort and energy that has been expended over the past 3 decades in understanding the circumstances that we're really in this country and where the true remedy is. The work that John Ainsworth's done, I've talked about Edwin Vieira's work. I've done a lot of research myself. I know there are others out there. There's a whole group out there they have an organization called Tactical Civics. David Zuniga and some other folks, they have some pieces of this puzzle. What's exciting to me is that we're starting to converge. We're coming together. We're starting to figure out the pieces of the pie, if you will. And I'm excited because we're working on what I believe is going to be pieces of a legitimate conversation, a legitimate remedy, which is going to involve a bottom-up solution. Right. And that's, to me, the excitement of the time. If you go back,
definitely exciting.
Go back to the founding generation. Sam Adams came up with some incredible ideas in 1765. It took a whole 10 years for them to result in the beginning of the American experiment in constitutional Republican government. And we had to fight a war against the most diabolical power in the world at the time, but we beat them. We won. But it was because of a whole lot of things that came together and a lot of people becoming united in a process. I believe that we're on the verge of repeating that history if we're smart enough and competent enough to do so.
Definitely. One of the really cool things to see, I agree with you, David, where people are starting to wake up and they're starting, in my opinion, to ask the right questions. We're starting to see people ask, what about, the state's constitution? Why are we focusing federally on the federal constitution and not the state's constitution? Shouldn't we be, diverting our attention to what's going on in the state? So, and for me, that was encouraging to see, because now we're placing our attention where it really should be at this point, and that is, the states. So, which opens up a whole new, thing for obviously people like, Virginia American Republic or North Carolina or, Texas, and
or
people
Florida.
who are trying to establish, or Florida, because they're starting to ask those right questions. And I think it's really great. So that part to me is encouraging.
It is very encouraging, in my opinion, yes.
And Florida's falling right behind what's going on. Well, we've already passed the red flag laws here. And
it's no doubt all the other states are going to follow eventually. It's going to happen.
17 states have them. There's about 20 more. For instance, I think I read day before yesterday, South Dakota passed the red flag law, with a Republican Congress, a Republican legislature, both houses, and a Republican governor.
Wow.
So, South Dakota. So, Tennessee, I know the red flag law is coming up there. Mississippi, the Senate passed it, but they've got a very strong Republican House and House and governor, and they've said it's just not going to pass. But the point is that this is being shelled out there all over the country. I see that as good news because people are going to start to have to deal with this issue. And one of the things that's really, in my opinion, startling, Florida passed the law last March. Between March and August, 2,600 people had their guns confiscated, 99% permanently.
Wow.
And most of the other states that have these laws in place, the number's around 300 and 400. Why such a massive number in Florida is just really curious. I just read that today. I was stunned. And that was only through August, 2,600. We're now, in February, 5-6 months later, how many more?
Wow.
And the question is, as we learned last week and having Bo Webster on the show, what are the reasons can be completely fictitious.
Absolutely.
For instance, I think this week I was talking to a friend up in Maryland who said that there was a man up there who was killed when he refused to have his guns taken.
Yep.
It's a law that's actually going to result in the deaths of people.
Right.
That's just not conscionable.
The idea
in my mind.
The idea that they're passing these laws to save lives is ludicrous, because if they really were concerned with lives being saved, it would be addressing different avenues that cause a heck of a lot more deaths than handguns or rifles. The people that are here illegally are in the tens of thousands of people that they kill a year. Yet these people go to court and then turn back loose upon us again. So it's not really about our safety. If you think for yourself. If it were really about our safety, if you were going to fight a fire, back up a minute, if you're going to fight several fires, wouldn't you start with the largest fire first, or are you going to go to the little bitty one? Wouldn't it make sense to go to the largest fire first and start to put it out first before you try to put any of the others out? Because in my logic, if you don't get rid of the big guy first, it can continue to spread, and you're just going to have more problems with other fires. So let's go after the big guy first. Well, if that's the case, the big guy in this example that we're speaking of is not guns. It's something completely different. If we look at medical errors, they're in the hundreds of thousands per year that people die from. And the hundreds of thousands. We're looking at firearms, I think it's in the hundreds. Hundreds of thousands versus hundreds. So who are you really trying to protect? Who are you trying to keep secure? When you have people here that don't belong here, and the numbers of people that they're responsible for taking their lives per year in the tens of thousands, yet you turn them loose on us again. You're not here to protect us. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me even take your point to another level, okay? What is historically the number one threat to life in the history of mankind? It's death by government.
Good point.
And yet, we aren't going to where the remedy to that is. And the remedy to that, in my opinion, is just, one Joe Blow on the planet, is found in the principle behind Section 13 of the Virginia Declaration of Rights, or Bill of Rights of Virginia, and the Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights, where it says that a well-regulated militia, and I'm going to combine those two articles, a well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people trained to arms, being necessary to the security of a free state, is the proper and natural and safe defense of a free state. And the right of the people to keep and bear arms, therefore, shall not be infringed. Because the number one killer of mankind is democide, death by government. Hundreds of millions.
What was that term?
Democide, D-E-M-O-C-I-D-E.
Democide. Okay.
It's genocide by the government. Millions, hundreds of millions of people in the 20th century died at the hands of their own governments.
But David, our government would never do anything like that.
Oh, they said that in Russia in 1912.
I'm just saying. There
Right?
are people. There are people
They
who
said
are.
it in China in 1940.
There are people who are convinced that our government would never do anything like that, and that, part of that is by design, and part of that is just by simple foolishness. That you would believe that the people who have repeatedly poisoned us. I mean, it's documented over the ages.
Yeah.
They've repeatedly poisoned us. They've repeatedly murdered. I mean, just the most recent one. If you look at just a one that comes to mind is Seth Rich. That man was murdered.
Yep.
He was murdered, and more than likely was murdered by somebody within our government because he released government information. He released stuff that made them look bad. So that's just simply a foolish thought.
I would remind everybody again of Jorge Santa Anna's statement. They who cannot remember the bad past are condemned to repeat it.
True. All right, Milo, what do you got a comment, Milo? I thought I heard you say something. I think he keeps his phone on mute.
Had my phone on mute.
I knew it.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to keep background noise down for you.
Well, thank you.
No, I don't think I really had any comment. I mean, I totally agree with David. Governments are the greatest threat that human beings have ever faced historically. They've, the facts prove out that governments have killed more people than anyone else, any other cause of death. So, but we should take the precautions. We should take the proper lawful precautions to try to ensure that doesn't happen to us. And the whole, the entire American experiment was an effort to alter that pattern of history. And for 150 years, we have been remiss. We've just fallen down on the job. We let a bad thing happen. We let a government overpower its people and start to refashion the rules of the game to its liking rather than what the people wanted. And ever since then, we just haven't fixed this problem. It's time to fix it. So I agree also with David that there is, as I said earlier, sort of a silver lining to all of this that's going on. It does not make me happy to see what's happening and to know that, the 10 or so bills that they're working through now are eventually going to, that's just a prequel. It's a prologue, I guess is a better word. They're working up to the one that they wanted to pass to start with. They've already revealed their entire hand. Their whole hand is, we want to take your gun.
Yep.
And, the only reason they backed off was because there was such a backlash. So if they've backed off to any degree, it's just a respite. It's not that they've changed their mind.
No, they're just putting they just lowered the
rethink.
They lowered the
rethinking their tactics.
They lowered the flames, if you will. They're still there.
Yeah, they're just rethinking their tactic on how they want to approach that ultimate goal. And one thing that I did have a question about, because I've been so involved in work this week, I've not had a chance to really catch up on any of this either. But I wondered if David or Chrissy, either one, were aware of the bill that they had proposed, which was registration. So, because that's always a precursor to confiscation. And I wasn't sure what had possibly happened with that bill, if anything at all.
I have not personally seen anything on that one yet. I feel like that was, the registration was sort of a grandfather clause or something that was worked into another bill, and it might have been the assault weapons one, but I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to go back and look, but I haven't heard anything about it lately.
Okay.
I'm now looking through my sources here to see if there's anything on that. If I find something, I'll bring it up.
I have a question for Chrissy.
Sure.
Chrissy, did you claim Virginia state citizenship? Am I right or wrong about that?
Me personally,
Yeah.
we're working on reestablishing the rightful state of Virginia at this time. We have not completed the process yet, so I'm still technically a national citizen.
Okay. Milo, did you... I thought somebody I was talking to. Did you do that for North Carolina? Are you a citizen of the North Carolina
Yes, sir.
now?
Yes, sir.
Milo's an old citizen of the North Carolina Republic.
My
I don't
mind,
know.
you know.
Old is a relative term, David. No, I altered my citizenship status in 2013, and you know, there are several of us. You've spoken with John Ainsworth before. He was actually on the pioneering end of that entire effort here in North Carolina to reestablish the original state of North Carolina. So
let me ask you, by becoming a citizen of the state, what advantage does that give you?
Oh, it's it's like a magic panacea. It solves all your problems. That is a joke. That is a joke.
That's why I laughed.
Probably creates more problems than because of the system.
No, not exactly. It's a means to an end, but the end is you got to take a long view of this. And I've said this to people before. This effort, this entire objective is a long-term goal. And as long as there's just a handful of us involved in this process in a couple of different states, and now, right now it is literally just 2 states. It's hopefully about to be 3. Wink, wink, Chrissy. But, as soon as the numbers grow, as soon as people begin, you said something earlier. Let me put it like this. What you said earlier, Rascala, was that this is going to force people to make a decision. They're going to be looking at a situation where the existing, commonly recognized, I call them de facto government, are going to force them to either choose to give up what they consider their God-given rights or to become criminals. That is to say, people in violation of the law. And so forcing people to make that decision is both good and bad. I mean, it's bad, obviously, because it upsets people's lives and it puts people in difficult positions. But unfortunately, like David said, in order to treat a sickness, you've got to be diagnosed and recognize that you are ill. And we are all ill. This entire system, and we are all a part of it. The entire system is messed up, intentionally so. And we've been through all of the hows and whys of that before, talking about going back all the way to Reconstruction and the overthrow of 10 states and ultimately the 14th Amendment and, how it was coerced and all of that. So there's a lot of backstory to explain all that to anybody that's listening that might not, have listened to the prior shows. And, if you haven't, I highly recommend it. But taking all of that as a given, the fact that people are going to have to make that choice now because of the actions of government pressing its hand is actually a good thing, because they're going to begin to realize that there's a serious issue and they're going to start looking for answers. And they're either going to have to settle for a solution, so-called solution, that breaks away from the process of law, legal due process, or they're going to have to say that is something we're not compromising on. We are not lawbreakers, and we are not in the wrong, and therefore we're going to insist that whatever solution we adopt has to conform to the law. And that's the path that I chose to take. That's the path that the MCAR and the Virginia American Republic and the Texas American Republic have all chosen to take, is a path that is unquestionably a lawful path. And so people making that decision at some point in the future because government forced them there is not a bad thing. That's a great thing, because I feel like people need to recognize, they need to look this problem square in the face and say, ultimately they need to look at this problem in the mirror, because that's what it comes down to. The choice of whether you want to be part of a lawful government or not boils down to one simple thing, and that is, am I going to choose a status that's lawful or not? And so I chose to alter my legal status. And eventually, to get back to your question here, eventually as the numbers grow and people make that choice more and more, then we will begin to stand together as state body politics on a lawful foundation with a justifiable, I guess you'd almost say, manifesto of what we're all about. And what we're about, tied directly back to constitutional government. And so in the end, the benefits will materialize, but you can't expect for just 1 or 2 or 5 or 20 or 50 people doing this to be sufficient to show those benefits right now. I have, I'm not going to get off on a tangent, but I'll just kind of keep this really short and simple. I've been through the courts with this argument, and the courts don't care. They care to a degree. They care mostly about shutting you up as much as they can. But they don't care enough about, a fidelity to the truth and blind justice and, fairness and being true to the process, the propaganda, how you're raised up to think that the courts are there to render impartial judgment on all issues. Well, I'm here to tell you they don't.
Absolutely.
So what I see, with a few people involved, it's more trouble. It's those few who begin this effort are in for some hard decisions and possibly some hard times. But as the numbers grow, as we gain support and popular recognition, then one thing, it's worth it to me. The one thing that I do know for a fact is that we have a legal justification for what we're doing, and it's not questionable. It's not tenuous. Once you understand it, it's undeniable. So I'm in this to the end, whatever the end might be, and hopefully I'll live to see the benefits. But those benefits then, to try to give people a little taste of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, those benefits would be liberty. Those benefits would be courts that were beholden to due process and impartial judgment. Those benefits would include government by the consent of the people. They would include government that stayed within its legal confines and didn't just think that it had impunity to legislate on any subject matter whatsoever and meddle in people's lives and penalize them for things that ought not to be crimes. Government that's accountable, government that has to answer to the people ultimately for everything that it does. So is that a benefit that's worth fighting for 5 years, a decade, 20 years, 30 years? To me, yes it is.
I agree.
Anyway.
And unfortunately, all those things that you mentioned, our government is none of those. They're not accountable to us. They do everything with impunity. Let's try this without getting tongue twisted. There is a 2-tier legal system in place, which is very evident. You can see that there are open criminals walking freely among us, smiling and still collecting, my goodness, who knows how much money So we have, without question, a system that is in place that is not truly a system of the people. It is a system of certain people, but it
It's
is
that
not.
oligarchy that David mentioned earlier. I
Yeah.
mean, he's hit the nail on the head. There's an oligarchy. They've designed this system for their benefit from the very beginning. You've said like 3 times tonight, that's by design. That's by design.
It is.
Well, it is.
It is. It is. All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back. You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show. Tonight I have, I have Chrissy, I have Milo, and I have David. And we're talking about a variety of things, primarily surrounding around the idea of a way to get out of this insanity of what we call government today. A legal way, a nonviolent legal way to remedy a problem that is evident in all of our lives. I mean, it's pretty hard not to see what is happening. And anyway, we'll go to a break and we'll be right back.
There are facts we're not being told on TV, so I want to talk to you about gun control in America. Why did all of the big media focus their attention on the attacks in Orlando and completely ignore the fact that the following weekend 52 people were shot in Chicago, a city with some of the strictest gun control laws in the country? There seems to be an agenda for gun control while ignoring the gun violence in other cities and countries where the experiment of gun control is already underway and failing. I carry a gun because there are only 2 types of creatures on this planet, predators and prey. No one watches a cheetah chase down a gazelle and deny that the gazelle has the right to use its horns to protect itself. But there are people who would deny that same right of self-defense to other human beings. Such people seem to think that the way to stop the cheetah is to cut the horns off the gazelle. That somehow, if you make it easier for the predator will simply go away. It doesn't work that way. If you make it easier for the predator, you get more predators. I carry a gun because when predators know they're less likely to have an advantage, they're less likely to be a predator. The FBI found that when states allow concealed carry, murder rates are immediately reduced. And cities in America that pass a law requiring households to have a firearm see the number of home invasions drop dramatically. I carry a gun because the ratio a gun is used in a homicide is significantly less than when it's used in self-defense. Firearms are used up to 300 times more often to save innocent lives than to commit a murder, and guns prevent up to 2.5 million crimes in the U.S. every year, often without a single shot ever being fired. I carry a gun not because it's a weapon, but because it's a shield. 200,000 women every year use a gun to defend themselves against sexual abuse. I carry a gun because almost every mass shooting in the last 50 years took place in a gun-free zone. Law-abiding citizens are forced to give up their right to protect themselves, while every criminal breaks the law, including gun-free signs, when they decide to murder. I carry a gun because a gun-free zone makes it easier for predators to target their prey. Stricter gun laws make the problem worse, and making guns illegal wouldn't remove murder from our cities any more than making heroin illegal stop addicts from doing drugs. I carry a gun because the facts are nations with strict gun control laws have significantly higher murder rates than those that don't. I carry a gun because I know in the U.S. scissors and knives kill almost 5 times more people every year than rifles do, including the AR-15 and other so-called assault rifles. Calling to ban a tool will not resolve the problem. I carry a gun because criminals break the law with or without them. The 9/11 terrorists used box cutters in airplanes. Timothy McVeigh used bags of assault fertilizer. I understand that some people want to blame things like semi-automatic rifles, 30-round magazines, hate crimes, terror threats, gun control, historic flags, national security, religion, or illegal immigration. I understand we want to blame something, anything that we can control. But don't blame me because I carry a concealed gun to protect my family. I understand we need to start addressing what we really want to ban: violence, murder, and insanity. I carry a gun because I know who's pushing to ban them. Our right to bear arms is not there simply to protect us against lowly criminals. I know the politicians know this, which is why they call for gun control instead of crime control. I carry a gun because I've seen gamblers who want more winnings, alcoholics who want more alcohol, and people with power want more power. I understand what the Founding Fathers knew, that the right to bear arms is there to protect the American people from those drunk with power, and I understand every country was free before it wasn't. I carry a gun because having the right to bear arms gives the citizens of this great nation a fighting chance against the predators of greed and power, whether in our home, our capital, or our neighboring lands. Evil exists only because too many good people stand by and do nothing. I know seeing America's right to free speech was a chilling wake-up call when it became locked away in a zone. That's why so many steadfast Americans and great organizations stand up for the people to keep the balance of power from tipping over. I carry a gun because it removes the unfair advantage between predators and prey. I don't carry because I'm looking for a fight. I carry a gun because I'm looking to be left alone. People can only persuade you to do something by one of two ways: reason or force. Having a gun with me removes their option to make me do something by force. It helps keep predators civilized. That's why the right to bear arms is important. That's why I own a firearm, and that's why I'm proud to say I carry a gun.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Goes, 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 goes,
Now, from sunny South Florida, it's the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscala. Every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to midnight on the L&M Network. And now, your host, Riscala.
All right. We are back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. Thank you for joining. It is an honor and privilege to have you listen in. And I want to take this opportunity to say some thanks to some of the stations who simulcast the program for us. One of them is High Point Radio out of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York, I think it is. KYAH out of Utah. Thank you. And, of course, our mothership, as Michael likes to refer to it, WCET-FM 101.7 out of South Carolina. Greatly appreciate it. And, you know, we are a subscriber-supported station, so we really do need your help. The information that you find here on this network, much of it is not available, readily available anyway. And for what we ask for you to become a subscriber, I've said many times it's not about the money, but unfortunately we do need the money. And what I mean by that is it's not $20 a month like some places, or $15.95 or $12. It's a whopping $5. We try to make it as affordable as possible. It is the most bang you'll get for your buck. If you look at the last, I don't know how many shows we've done. David keeps track of it for me. I think 10 or 11 shows we've done about this subject. I promise you, in each of those shows was at least $5 worth of information in each of those shows. And we're asking for $5 subscription for a whole month. I don't ask anything of you that I don't do myself. I am a subscriber. I believe in our network. I believe in what we're doing. I've been a subscriber from the time that the network had to ask for subscribers. So I'm not somebody who gets paid to be on the air. Well, I do get paid, but not financially. My payment comes in the form of gratification, knowing that somehow, some way, I'm doing whatever I can to help bring about a positive change, promote a positive change, promote a change that would induce a better society for my children and my grandchildren. Because I have seen in the short span that I have been here what's happened. And it really is, it's scary how quickly the change has come upon us. I've seen the posts, I've read the articles about Venezuela. In one generation, they took it from the third richest country in that region of the planet. And look at it today. People are literally being shot in the streets. No food, no water, the very basics of life. They're fighting for the very basics. It really is sad, and part of that is because they were able to deceive the people, promise them one thing, and deliver something else. Another part of that is a system that was in place that purposely dumbed down the people so that they were more accepting of these ideas and not willing to stick with, what has worked for so long. David has an excellent point where he says those who don't remember the bad past are doomed to repeat it. And he follows it up with the good. If you remember the good past, then you're destined to have a good future. If you repeat the good past, you repeat the good future. Well, if it worked for us in the very beginning of the country so well, before it was all corrupted with what had happened in the late 1800s, then all we're asking for is to go back to what worked originally, and the way that it was intended to work, because clearly what we have today isn't working. I would be willing to argue with anybody that we have a government that is representative of the people today. Unless those people are communists, maybe that's possible. But generally speaking, I'm watching. My opinion is I'm watching our government literally implode upon itself, and it seems to be no better time than to tell people about what has occurred and what we can do about it. And I believe that, like Milo believes, this is not necessarily for me myself, but hopefully I'll be able to see it, but maybe not. But at least for my children, my grandchildren, it's not something that you're going to have an instant gratification from. And, sadly, we've been kind of brought that upon ourselves. Everything is instant. We have instant this, we have instant that. Geez, there's places you can go instantly get married. And there's other places you can go instantly get divorced. And we have instant tea. We have all this instant gratification for whatever it is that we want. And we've forgotten the importance of the simple act of planting a seed and letting that seed grow. Instead, we expect to, plant a seed, and then the next day it's the beanstalk. It's reaching up to the heavens. And that's not the reality of what we live in today. And trying to bring about a reality like that something that you plant can be even instantly grown to who knows what. The future of that doesn't represent a very healthy future for any of us. What we're trying to do is just restore something that was stolen from people, from all of us. Not wanting to take anything that doesn't belong to us, just wanting to take back what has been taken from us. That was intended to be by the founding fathers. So you'll hear all of these politicians speak about the founding fathers wanted this, and the founding fathers said that, and the founding fathers did this. Well, if they're so hell-bent on doing what the founding fathers wanted, then they should recognize what has happened. They may not even realize it, that what has happened in the late 1800s. But once I knew, I realized this was not something that I could just keep to myself. I've given the analogy many times. If we're walking down the road, and you're on the street side, and I'm on the outside, and there's a car coming for you, and you got headphones on, and I'm trying to tell you there's a car coming at some point. If you don't respond, I'm sorry, you may get upset with me. I'm going to grab your behind, and I'm going to throw you out of the way. Well, that's what we're trying to do today. We're trying to warn people that there is a better way for us. There is a much better way for us, a more balanced way. I always go back to balance because really that's what it's about for me. I really believe that when things were set up, it was set up so that there would be a balance. And the balance would be in the favor of the people, not in the favor of the government. And that the way that the things should be set up is that the people should always have the ability to physically outpower their government. The reason being is exactly what we're living today. You have a government that is literally trying to disarm the people, literally. And people are getting to the point where I'm afraid that there's going to be a response, and the response is not going to be very pretty on either side. And it's not necessary. And the reason I believe that it's not necessary is when you have knowledge, you have something that cannot be taken from you. And the knowledge that I have gained through the friends that I have made tells me that there is a legal process that we can take to do away with this insanity, to do away with these people who feel like they can do just whatever in the hell they want, stick their nose in your business, constantly invade your privacy. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine a couple of days ago. Believe it, of all things in the world, the last thing in the world that you would think you would have a conversation about, but they're a homeowner and they wanted my opinion and how hard it would be, and they asked me about a toilet, and we were talking about a toilet. 2 days later, I get on my while I'm online in those little ads that you get, toilets. These people are listening to everything. It's disgusting. So how would they know that I was interested in a freaking toilet? I didn't go online and look for a toilet. All we did is discuss a toilet, and somehow toilets come up. Now, how often would a toilet come up in your conversation? And my point being is that they're listening to us, and it's not acceptable. But we've been conditioned to think that it is, but it's not. Anyway, let me welcome my guests back. Chrissy, thank you for taking time to call in. Let me get to you first. Any comment you want to make before I get on? I'll get to Milo, and then I'll get to David. Any comment, Chrissy?
I don't actually have any comment right at this very moment, but you are definitely right. They are always listening.
And it's disgusting, and it's sad that people are willing to accept it. These things this Alexa thing, I went to a friend of mine's house who was very awake. This man is very, very awake. I was shocked. He had we were talking all these things. Alexa, tune in to something or another. I went, are you kidding me? You've got one of those, and you and I are talking? We're leaving this room, pal. And we're not having any more. I don't know. I didn't even know what to say.
It's almost become kind of a joke now that, in the circles I run in, we kind of joke around and say, it's like the FBI, is watching us,
Yeah.
And
they don't need to wiretap.
It's fun to joke about it, but it's like really the collecting of information and, what they have access to in people's homes. We let them right in. With these various devices.
They don't need to wiretap. They can, if you have a smart device, they can get into your smart device. Whether that's a television, whether that's a tablet, whether that's an Android or whatever that might be, an iPhone. If it's a smart device, they can be tapped into, and especially a television. Samsung has made a public announcement to people. You be careful what you say and do in front of your television if it's plugged into the internet. Why? Because it can be hacked into, and they can watch you in your bedroom. How nice is that? All right, let me get on.
Terrible.
Let me move on to Milo. Milo, any comments or questions from you?
No, only that I would never have any device that's smarter than me. No, I don't have any comments for Scott.
Words of wisdom. I totally agree with you, my friend. David?
Yeah, no, I think what you said was very appropriate. The listeners to the show, I don't know if they're familiar, we've talked about it a little bit, but the term technocracy. And the work of a guy by the name of, I can't believe I'm doing this at the moment that I'm going to say his name. I can see Patrick Wood has written a book on technocracy that's very good for people to read. The ability, technocracy is the idea that something is going on, and the argument is that science says that this is the way things ought to be going. In other words, who is science? It's individuals who claim that they are smarter than we are, they are more in touch with reality than we are, and they can tell us what to do. And it's coming at us from all many different angles. We're getting to the place where artificial intelligence is really getting scary in terms of what they're capable of doing in just manipulating people's lives. It's sustainable development and that whole agenda, where, for instance, you no longer are allowed to even collect the water off of your own roof. That's illegal, and you could be fined for doing so. Or how much, the carbon footprint. There's going to be a day in the future, for example, when, for instance, 20 years from now, someone's mother dies in Pennsylvania and you live in Florida, and you get on a plane and you fly up to the funeral, and while you're there, perhaps you get a call from your company that you got to get back to Florida again because some things happen. You got to get back sooner than you thought. So you go to buy another ticket to fly back, and you don't have enough energy credits to buy the ticket, so you can't fly back home. And this is the kind of things that are not just, these are not just ideas that are, fictional. This is actually stuff that's being discussed in the schemes of governments and so on. And it's what we're seeing just in the fact your television can watch what you're doing, and the fact that your refrigerator can talk to your car, is this concept of the Internet of Things. There's a guy by the name of Paul Manpilli who, back in 2014, he won what was called the Templeton Award because he was involved with hedge funds, and he won this contest where he took $50 million and turned it to $85 million in 18 months and won this contest. But he then went off the radar for a few years and came back about 2 years ago talking about the Internet of Things. And the Internet of Things is this idea of all these different devices can all talk to each other. And then he put out a video of about 90 minutes long, and in that video he was enticing investors, regular people, to invest into the Internet of Things, because by 2020, and this was 2016, there were going to be manufacturing over 50 billion chips that you could fit 100 on a dime, that are literally going to be put into every device being created on the planet. And this little chip is going to allow all those devices to communicate with each other. That's where we're going. I would submit that if we don't get on top of this issue of subsidiarity, where we have the ability to have the mechanism, the authority, and the access to information at the local level to be able to stop this type of thing from being imposed upon us, drones will be flying over, and technologies are going to become so invasive in our lives that there's not going to be any way to stop it at that point. This is about much more than just the fact that they're looking to reduce our ability to have a weapon in our home to protect ourselves. This is about controlling society and individuals in society. And we're no longer going to be the sovereign people of this country. There's going to be another sovereignty that is going to control us. That's just my, peanutty brain operating. But I want to say one thing on the positive side. There's a technology innovation curve that has been put out a few years ago, which talks about how whenever you see things go in a positive direction, it starts with somebody creating an innovation. And then at some point in the future, that innovation becomes accepted by enough people that it moves toward mainstream, until eventually it becomes saturation point. And we saw that with the PC back in the early 90s. And we've seen it with the smartphone. And we've seen it with other devices. There's another term of art out there called the law of diffusion of innovation. And that's the idea that when you start working on a project, it starts with the innovators, which is about 2.5% of the people. And then it moves to early adopters, which is about 13 to 15%. And then you move into what we'd call the early majority. And the point is you should get to between 15 and 18% of the people accepting that innovation, it takes off on its own. And what we're talking about tonight is the concept of the innovators. We're in the innovation part of the curve right now. And that's when a new technology comes to market. And what we're talking about in this whole conversation is a technology. It's a technology, a political technology. It's a science of government technology where we're learning from the past, the good and the bad, so that we can improve the future. And so that's what's got me excited is we're leading edge in this conversation tonight. And the people that I'm connecting with, like Milo and Chrissy and you, Riscala, and the other people like John Ainsworth, and there's other people across this country that are involved in other aspects of this thing. We're pulling together concepts that could literally be a rescue, as you know, Milo's organization and Chrissy's organization, America's Remedy. We're literally in a position where we're part of the remedy. That's exciting to be, I feel honored and blessed and privileged to even be in this conversation because of where this can go. And a decade ago, I began to think about these things. I don't know why. I believe it might be providential in my own life, but back then I was looked at like I had a tin hat on my head when I talked about, hey, you better watch what's coming. It's going to get really scary soon. And people go, I don't know what you're talking about. They don't say that to me very much anymore.
Well, my experience in all of this was after 9/11. I remember as 9/11 happened, I was on the phone with my brother, and I called him up, and he was literally on his way out. He said, well, I'm on my way out. And I said, don't leave the house. Go back in the house and turn the TV on. And later on, he told me I'd never heard such fear in your voice as I heard that when you called me that day. So while we're on the phone, we're watching these buildings come down. And I remember saying to him, look at that, it doesn't look right. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I don't know, it just doesn't look right. The building just doesn't look right. So the short of it all is that started, but prior to that, I was what you would consider fat, dumb, and happy American. Oh, yeah, hooray, USA, USA, go, 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 blah, blah, blah. After that happened, I don't know, something triggered inside of me. I felt that something was wrong. I prayed repeatedly, God, I know something tells me something is not right here. I need to know what is right. February of 2002, I found out that my government lied to me about a war that I served in. We killed God knows how many people. All over a lie. When I discovered that night, I thought I was having a nervous breakdown. I didn't know what my reality was anymore. I really didn't. I questioned my very life. What in the world am I doing here? How can this possibly be true that a government would lie to me to the point that would kill at least what they reported on our side, my generation, somewhere around 60,000 of my generation, and God knows how many Vietnamese people. All over a lie, and I just couldn't wrap my mind around that. So my experience with the government is that they will lie to you, they will harm you, they will do whatever they feel is necessary in order for them to retain their power and keep you in submission to whatever it is they want for you. This is what I've learned about our government. And everything I have said, I believe to be 100% accurate about our existing government. Now, if I am correct, and I believe that I am, is that the kind of government that you want? Because that's not the kind of government that was intended for us to live under. We have been deceived on so many levels that we think it's normal. Imagine this. Imagine this for a moment. A 15 or a 16 or a 17-year-old child thinks that war is normal. Their whole life, we have been at war. So why wouldn't it be normal to them? If you grew up your whole life you had an empty lot next door, And in that empty lot, from the time you were a child, in that empty lot, people fought back and forth, back and forth. You think it's normal because you grew up around it all day, all of your life. Unless some divine intervention came in and said, hey, you know what, this isn't right, something's not right here. The majority of the people would think this is normal. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, their whole lives, we have been at war, some kind of open war. We've been at war for hundreds of years, but they've been behind the scenes. These are open war in your face. And they think it's normal. Is this the kind of government that you want? Because it's not the kind of government I want. I want to see a change. I want to see a permanent change. And I know, with what little I know about history, with what little I have learned about this country, and I'm so grateful for this country because I wasn't born here. I came here from somewhere else. At the age of 5 years old, I watched somebody get executed. My mom tried to hide it from me, but it was too late. I'd already seen it. I'm 67 years old. I still remember that day. And if you want that kind of thing in your neighborhood and in your city, then you go ahead and remain silent. Go ahead and continue to allow these people to do what they want to do, because that's inevitably what is going to happen. We will reach a point where we will no longer be able to defend ourselves, and whatever they want, should we disagree, if we don't get, quote, re-educated or imprisoned, then the only thing left is execution. Now, if you think I'm exaggerating, all you have to do is what David says. Go back and look at history. Just look at how many times a government has disarmed its people and what comes right after that. Genocide. Genocide by government. The greatest murderer that has ever been invented by man. If we cannot keep our government under control, and let me tell you, we have no control over what's going on today. None at all. And if you can't do that, then you should be afraid of these people, because they're willing to do anything and everything in order to retain their power. And they have evidently shown you that time and time again. It's time to make a change, my friends. And what is being presented is something that is, it's as basic as you can get. If I came to your house and I took something from you and I deceived you in such a way where you thought you were getting something in return, but in the reality of it all, you found out you got ripped off. Wouldn't you want that back? If somebody took something that belonged to you, wouldn't you want that back? Because that's really what we're talking about. This is something that was taken from us that belonged to us at one time. But it was stolen under a deceptive plan and with force in some cases, with absolute violent force. People were removed from office. That's how violent, I can't think of the word, vicious these people were. They would physically remove people from office. Is that the kind of America that you think the Founding Fathers wanted to have for the future generations? Where I think it was a governor, if I'm not mistaken, forced out of their position. Either you get out or we'll get you out. That's your choice, pal. And we'll put in who we want to put in. Does that sound like the kind of America that we were told that we live under? Because that's what's happened in the past. And all we're asking is for that to be exposed so that people realize the deceptive plan that has been put in place, and we do away with all of that. And we go back to the system that was originally in place, wherein we wouldn't be having this conversation today. These people who call themselves governors wouldn't dare even think of passing something like that's being passed today, because they would know better. The people would have the power to literally move in on them and remove them if necessary. It wouldn't be about talk. It would be about action. And all of the necessary tools would be in place. David describes how a militia that would be sponsored by the state, well-trained, well-regulated, when somebody is out, that would be the check and balance, if you will. When somebody steps out of place, the militia steps in and says, no, you're not going to do that because we have an agreement. The agreement says there are inalienable rights and you will not infringe upon any of them. And we will make sure of that. We don't have that protection today. We think that we're protected, but, generally speaking, we think we're protected, but we're not. We're really more susceptible today to violence than ever before because of the original system has been corrupted. That's basically what it boils down to. Let me go to David real quick. David, what do you want to add to that, my friend?
Well, I would just follow up on what you just said, Riscala, with this one principle. The people will not oppress themselves.
Amen. Good point.
And that's the principle behind well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. I would submit, however, that we also need to have a new guard for our future security that the founding generation had for a short period of time, and then they eliminated accidentally. They trusted the government too much. And that was the committees. Back in the 1774, 1775 period, when the First Continental Congress was put in place, the First Continental Congress created what were called committees of correspondence, observation, and safety. They had three functions. Correspondence, it was kind of like the internet of the day. It was all done by letters. But every single township and county in the colonies created a committee of correspondence for being able to communicate amongst the colonies because of the threat of the government. And they said that we're going to continue this until all of the disputes with the government of Great Britain are fully resolved. They didn't intend to remove themselves from the monarchy until the shot heard around the world happened and they were attacked by the British government. They really were planning to stay loyal subjects of the King of England. But they had the correspondence committees, and then they had observation committees. Observation meaning what are they doing behind our backs? And they actually had spies, and they had people that went and observed the Parliament and the administration of government in England to find out what are the laws that they're passing and what are they really what's happening. And then the third was the committees of safety. The third aspect of this committee purpose was to oversee the militia with a civil power, because they even knew that even though we are in the militia, we could mess up, we could abuse that power. And so they actually had a check and balance between the executive power of the militia being the military, and the legislative power of the militia being the committees. And then you also had the judicial power, which was in the grand juries and the petit juries. So we actually had the three branches of government in the structure of the people within the militia function. I believe personally that it might be a smart idea to make sure we have that committee function in the people's hands again. Not that it's because where it went to back in 1776 is it went into the constitutions in the structure of the governments of the states and the counties, but it didn't remain in the people's hands. It went fully into the representatives' hands, where the people no longer had a say. So again, my point is, we have an opportunity to fix some of our own errors and give ourselves a more perfect union, as it says in our Constitution in the preamble, a way to make things better. And what Milo and his team of people in America's Remedy have done is they've given us another piece of the puzzle that is significant and invaluable in us understanding how the atrocities happened. And it all happened, and by the way, it's interesting when you go look at the history around the same time that, John Ainsworth says everything happened, the Reconstruction Act. There were other acts that were also implemented by Congress at that exact same time on the exact same day as the Reconstruction Acts. I shared one of these with Milo this week.
Huh.
Okay?
Wasn't aware of that.
Okay, one of the acts was that 6 of the southern states had their allocation of funds for their militia rescinded. And interestingly, I think it was actually all 10 of the states because, remember, in the Reconstruction Act, they turned those states into regions, 6 regions. And these 6 states were just associated with those 6 regions. And so the allocation of funds for their militia were dissolved. They couldn't have militia anymore because they knew the power of the people if they had their military power in the hands of the people in their local communities and in their states. And this happened literally on the same day as the Reconstruction Act. For 2 years, that funding went away. The reason we know that, I found the bill where that provision of rescinding the funds was repealed in 1769, 2 years later. That's the bill I found. I didn't find the original, but because it was in the allocation bill in 1867. I found the bill where it was put back in 1869 by rescinding that law.
I think Milo's got a comment. Go ahead, Milo.
No, I was just I was letting David know it was the 19th century, not the 18th century.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Duh.
Yeah. So just to clarify, from 1867 until
1869. Yeah, what I say? Did I say 18th century? Duh. Okay. Well,
it's okay, no problem, man.
I've made a few mistakes in my life.
So what?
That was a good find.
Okay, hang on, you guys. Let Chrissy talk for a second. Go ahead, Chrissy.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add to some of the stuff you were saying. And really, when we're looking at this whole situation of tyranny and violence and how we respond to all of that, it really starts in the home. And you said something about influence and things like that. And I was thinking about, I have children, obviously, and they play video games, and some of those games are pretty violent. I personally don't let my children play really bad video games, but our children, the whole crux of this, I feel, begins in our home, because our children are they have, homes with parents that just don't care.
Sadly.
2, they're being desensitized by violent video games. And we have just very broken homes and parents that just don't care. And when it comes to growing the next generation, I mean, you and I and Milo and David, we see these things. We can see tyranny from far off. We can see violence from far off, right? Our children are being desensitized to these things. So I feel like by the time they become adults and they're willing to make these types of decisions, are they going to physically even be able to? Because they're not going to know what tyranny looks like anymore. They're not going to know what violence looks like anymore. So
good point.
We need something to happen in our homes with parents, with children who are going to raise that next generation to notice what it looks like and pay attention. Because if we have the government coming in and, 1, dictating what mental health looks like, and 2, desensitizing our children, and 3, parents not caring, who's going to be the next group to fight? I mean, I'm 38, I'll be 39, but where's the next generation that's going to have to stand up and fight? Because this is going to keep going. So I feel like you say, it's all by design.
It is.
So if we don't stop that, if parents don't stand up and stop that, we're going to be in for a world of hurt. And it's sad what's going on in some of these homes today.
We're
the
getting a
violence
taste
thing,
of it.
The mental health thing.
Yep.
Like I said, some of these people don't even know what tyranny looks like. They wouldn't know if it came and smacked them in the face. And that part's scary, because that's when the government comes in and they will take full advantage of that.
We're getting a taste of what you're talking about. Let me share this with you. I mentioned to you at 5 years old, I watched somebody get executed out in the street, out in front of everybody. This was in Cairo, Egypt. There was a dictator there at the time. His name was, of course, it eludes me now. Nasser. His name was Nasser. Abdul Nasser. Anyway, my mom told me later on that this man who was executed was well known for speaking out against the government, because this Nasser was doing all kinds of things. The short of all of that, now we're back in America. This is probably 4 or 5 years later. I'm in school, and I got upset about something. I came home and I said to my mom, I said, the government is so stupid. And my mom, this is how it affected my mom. Now, mind you, we're living in America, in the land of the free. I'm in my home, and I tell my mom the government is stupid. She grabs me by the arm, takes me into her room, closes the door behind her, and says to me in a loud whisper, "Don't you ever speak about the government." That is somebody who witnessed horrific things that affected them for the rest of their lives, even after knowing that they were living, quote, in a free land. Now, if that's the kind of government that you want, because that's the road that we're on eventually, with all of this that is going on, that's the road that we're on, people. And that's not an exaggeration. It may happen in a year. It may happen in 10 years. But it's going to happen unless people stand up for what is right. And what is right is to stand up for our God-given rights to defend ourselves, first and foremost, to defend ourselves. Because if we're not able to defend ourselves, the rest of it is down the tubes. And that's exactly what happens when they disarm the people. Go ahead, Chrissy.
Yeah, and I was just saying, like, we need to start training our children. I mean, I know what I do personally on my time and how I care for my children, but the majority of the U.S., it's sad what's taking place in these homes, and they're not. It's a scary thought to think of what's coming with the next generation. I mean, I could go into this all deeper, but I don't know that'll be taken well on the show. But
I'm sure you've heard the term snowflake, and this entitlement, entitlement mentality. I'm dealing with that on a personal level. I have one of mine who believes it. After having gone through school, and then they decided they wanted to reach out and explore the world, so they went to, of all places, they went to California. It's just some years back. When they came back, they have this entitlement mentality that because California was willing to give them anything, literally anything they needed. And, well, you know, Dad, I got this and I got that and I got this from the government. I got that from us. Where do you think all that came from? Well, it came from the government. No, you dingbat. It didn't come from the government. May be the one who handed it to you, but that's not where it came from. It came from people like me paying taxes, and you're here in front of everybody saying you're entitled to this. What makes you any better than anybody else? This is another part of the puzzle, if you will, that we're fighting today. And if we don't,
and also our boys, our men,
they're not men anymore.
they're very feminine, and I'm going to be careful what I say, but it's the wussification of America is what I call it,
and part of it is chemical castration that people don't know is going on. There's a chemical out there. Rprs, I can't think of what it is right now, but it's ATR something or another. I see it in my mind, I can't read it. But this is in a lot of foods that we eat, and not on foods, forgive me, it's in sanitizer. I think it's in hand sanitizer. Anyway, it's something that we come into. It's
everywhere. It's literally everywhere. I mean, anything from even, many people may or may not know this, but even drinking soy, we saw a soy push.
That's right.
And there's so much, estrogen, your body processes it differently, but it does process it into estrogen, and we're feeding our boys, all of this, outside of all the crap we're injecting into them, all the chemicals we put on our body, all the chemicals we put in our body. Our kids' brains are literally rotting, and their hormones are out of control.
It is a war. We're in a war.
It is 100%.
And the war is for the future of our country. Go ahead.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm all about this this new craze for the fake meat veggie burgers.
Oh stay away.
I'm kidding. I'm so kidding.
You know what? You know what immediately turned me off to that, Milo? What immediately turned me off to that was Bill Gates is involved. I said, hey, no one can do that.
Yes, I'm out.
I will say this, though. Chrissy made some good points. And one thing that I've had conversations in the past with Chrissy about this subject, so I know that she'll agree. And David, too, because he was a pioneer in the homeschool movement. But one of the things is homeschooling is a way that people can have more influence over their children's lives by taking them out of the indoctrination centers of this existing system and giving them an education that they have more direct control over. I know there are practical obstacles that people face making that kind of decision, but I do always get a little, it warms my heart to see people at least look at the option and give it consideration and try to make it happen. But
Absolutely.
there's definitely a lot to be said about how we raise children. And one thing that Chrissy was talking about, broken families, that has a direct impact. But I would say something that's worth mentioning is that the very system we're talking about, the very nature of it, and this is sort of a different aspect of it than we usually focus on, but the welfare aspect of it to a large degree has contributed, I believe the evidence is pretty strong, supporting the conclusion that over the last, I'd say 60 years or thereabouts now, ever since Lyndon Johnson and his Great Society push, and I mean, even going back further than that, you could go back all the way to really about the 30s when FDR started Social Security and the New Deal. But however far you want to go back with it, I mean, to be quite honest, I could take you all the way back to congressional records from the Reconstruction Congress, from the 39th and 40th Congresses in the 1860s, that show that they had ulterior motives for trying to give suffrage to the freedmen. And their motives were that they knew that would be a political base that would support the re-election of the fledgling Republican Party. I mean, they said this stuff in their committees. It's on record. That was why they wanted, they said verbatim, pretty daggum close to verbatim, we want to give these people suffrage in the state before the state give them suffrage. Otherwise, they'll be loyal to the states and not to us. So, however far back you want to take it, the motives for the welfare society, and it went beyond suffrage even back then. I mean, the tie-in to that is, of course, the Freedmen's Bureau Act, which basically was, and please don't take this the wrong way, because I'm not trying to say that, freed slaves did not deserve, the opportunity to make an honest, fresh start. But there was a lot of injustice that went on there, because everything that was given to someone had to be taken from someone else. And so however far back you want to go with that, and it's continued, as I said, all the way up from FDR through Lyndon Johnson and even to today, you still have this governmental motivation to use the public coffers to give to people what they have not earned, and all done in the name of, the general welfare is how they usually try to couch it, or some variation thereon. But when you do that, what you wind up with are people who, in society generally, people who no longer have to rely on a bond between one another to get by in the world. And they think, oh, government's got my back.
Exactly.
Government's got, it's got whatever I need. I can go to the government and get a check. I can get, whatever. I can get food stamps. I can get whatever I need to get from the government. So I don't need to make good life choices where I choose a life partner and we build a family and we make a commitment to stay together until we die, and then we make good on that commitment. I mean, there's no staying power with people anymore. I mean, and that's not everybody. Clearly, it's not universal, but it's something that
that's frowned upon.
The ubiquity of it has grown noticeably throughout the generation.
What you just described is actually frowned upon. Describing a traditional family growing up.
Right.
That's not in the agenda. That's not. No. You're not accepting, Milo. You're just not accepting. You're closed-minded. Our families today are diverse. They're all of these things. Blah 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 blah. It's all I've said for a long time. It's a direct attack on the family because the family is the very fabric of our country. If you can tear the families down, you'll tear the whole country down, and that's slowly what is happening. Chrissy made an excellent point, and that it starts at home. They're talking about gun control, the seriousness of this, the reality of this. Just look at like the UK where they have these serious gun bans in place. I mean, really, really serious, almost to the point where just about everybody's disarmed. Okay, so you can't kill somebody with a gun. What do? They go to knives. Now, this is how silly it's become. There are judges there that want to rule against having a pointed knife. So what have you done in all of this? You've disarmed the people, and they're at the point where they're no longer able to defend themselves. They can't fight with a gun any longer. Now they've got knives. Well, now the knives, you're saying, well, now they have knife, what's it called? A knife, were they collection centers? I can't think of what it's, anyway. They have places where you can...
buyback. They got a buyback program for them.
Where you, instead of buying them back, you just voluntarily... turn them in. They got boxes. I've seen pictures of these boxes where it's crazy. So my point being is that for somebody to convince people out there, this is why I want people to think for themselves. For someone to convince you that by taking away something, for this particular example, we're going to say guns, by making certain guns illegal and taking them off of the streets, somehow you're safer. And my argument to that is the people who don't give a damn about the laws, the people who are the ones who cause these problems, because if they cared about the law, they wouldn't break the law, they wouldn't murder somebody. By the way, murder is against the law. It doesn't seem to stop anybody. Right. So how is it that you think that someone who takes guns off the streets is going to prevent murder? That's just a simple, silly, foolish thought. It's just not going to happen.
The final logical step to all of this, Riscala, is by the time I'm about 90 years old, we're bound to have judges and politicians writing bills and passing rulings saying that it's illegal to own donkeys because you might use the jaw of your dead ass to kill somebody.
Yeah. It's really sad that people can't recognize. Yeah, that people can't recognize that this is what's happening. It's a little here, it's a little there, and now we're at the point where it's no longer a little there in your face. And, David and I are looking at this. It's going on here in Florida because we're both in Florida. And they've already passed the red flag laws. Last show, we gave you an example of the horrific nightmare somebody went through because of these red flag laws, because there was no due process, because if there were some due process, nobody would have ever showed up at that man's house. They would have known who he was. They would have known what he stood for. They would have known that he wasn't a threat. They would have known there was no point in going out there and talking to him. They would have known that whoever filed the report was full of feces, if you will. But none of that occurred. Instead, they show up at his house ready for war. They had already been warned. This man is dangerous. He'll shoot you. So they're already ready to shoot the guy. That's how bad this is. And for a state to be permitted to continue to do these things, to me, is unacceptable. And the best that I can do is to make it known to other people. Again, knowledge is something they can't take from you. Once you have the knowledge, once it's burned into your brain, there's no way that I know of right now anyway, that they can steal that from you. They can write all the papers they want. They can sign all the papers they want, but they can't legally take that out of your brain. Not yet that I'm aware of. So if you have the knowledge, which is what we're trying to pass on to people tonight, that there is a better way. There's a better way for all of us, but we have to act upon that. I think probably the first place to go would be where America's Remedy. What do you think, Milo? America's Remedy would be the best place to go?
Oh, I certainly suggest that. Yeah, I suggest
get more
that
information.
Website. It's,
okay, just so that you guys.
AmericasRemedy.com.
Yeah, just so that you guys know, I'm not affiliated with them. They're not paying me to say this. This is just something I believe in. David was kind enough to get me a DVD from America's Remedy. It is so full of information. I'm telling you, I'm going to be the third time I'll be watching it again because it just It's not something that we talk about. It's sad when you think about it. A lot of people can have deep, deep conversations about sports. This guy, that guy, they know everything there is to know about the sports. But when it comes to our government and what's happened to us, they don't have a clue. And it's sad because sports is not going to affect you unless you're a heavy gambler or something like that. Sports is not going to affect you and your family, where the other is. We've been taught, well, let's not talk about politics because you can't do that around family. Religion and politics, you can't do that. I say, no, hell no. You talk about politics and you talk about religion around family because you need to know who your friends are and you need to know what's right and wrong and you need to be able to stand up for what's right and wrong. We've been kind of designed out of that, if you will. We've got to get away from the ability to, you don't agree with me, then you're my enemy. That's not how it's supposed to be, people. We should be able to have an open discussion. You know, I had brought a young lady on who made a very emotional cry about what was happening in Virginia. And I brought her on. She got very emotional on the air with us. I really wasn't expecting it. But we couldn't have a conversation with her. She just completely shut down. If that kind of mentality continues, we won't be able to get anywhere. We need to be able to discuss things. That's what we're trying to do tonight, is to have a discussion and give you knowledge. Knowledge I don't think is readily available. I mean, unless you go purposely seeking for it, and even if you were, I wouldn't know where to start. How would you go look to find out what happened in 67, when all this went on?
Google is your best friend.
But I mean, how if somebody said, I never had an idea that any of this happened to begin with, that what you guys were, once you guys introduced me to all of this and the Reconstruction Act, all of that, I didn't know about that. I just knew that the government that I was living under was the dirtbags. I'd like to use another word, but I just leave it at dirtbags. It's clearly not a representation of what I would want as a government. So once I was introduced to this, I realized this is something that people need to know about. This is something that everybody should know about. And I'm willing to venture there are probably politicians up there who don't even know about it. Because I don't think it's readily available. It's not information, we certainly weren't taught it, unless somebody had maybe a divine moment of curiosity, if you will, that, hey, this isn't right, and let me start checking this out, let me start checking that out, and started finding, just like me, I had that moment of saying, this is just not right. Something is not right. And the more I looked, the more I found. And once I found the thing about the Gulf of Tonkin, how that was a lie, and that started the whole Vietnamese War, that was just a snowball from there forward. So maybe somebody somewhere along the line said, our government just doesn't seem right. Let me start looking at this and that and the other. And the more they look, the more they find. Because that's what it seems like to me. David, you've been doing some researching for Florida, and you found some disturbing things.
On what point?
You were doing some research for Florida, and you found some disturbing information.
Well, it depends which disturbing information you're referring to. There's been several, but like, for example, even with the red flag law that was put in place, the way that was railroaded through in the state of Florida is pretty concerning, because that bill was put in place after most of the language in the bill was put in place after the committees had gone through their process on the floor of the Senate. The bill was eventually passed with over 2,000 lines of new information in it that wasn't there until it got on the floor. So it didn't have the ability to be debated whatsoever. And is that what you're referring to, or is there
that was one, and then there was something about I think you mentioned it earlier about early on there was I'm trying to think of the right word. They defunded I think you mentioned it earlier. They defunded the militias here.
Well, but that was not just in Florida. That was in 6 different states. They defunded the militia. I mean. And the thing that's funny about this, and this has to do with all the studying I've done. I mean, I'd say 95 to 98% of the studying I've done over the last, 10 years or so. Most of it's hidden in plain sight. You can go to archives of state, documents and find all kinds of amazing information that, all you got to do is go do Google searches, and they will take you to state archive websites, and you can go in there and just start looking around at documents that have been, they've been digitized, and you can find all kinds of amazing information. That's how I do most of my research. And though I do have some, I have gone to the Florida Supreme Court archives to get copies of statutes and so on, copies of documents from the state of Florida. But it's anybody can find this information. I'm not special. It's just, and for instance, one of the places that was a really great resource was I went to the New York Times archives back during the early 1900s, because there was we've been incapacitated. That's the term I guess I'd use. That's what's happened to the American people over the last 150 years. They've literally put us in a position that we have no power. Our vested authority as individuals has been eliminated. We have no recourse, though we think we do, because they're still telling us that we live under a constitutional republic and our states are sovereign states, and we are all, we have all the powers and rights and duties and privileges and immunities of citizens. And, everything seems to be just hunky-dory, right? Until you actually have something come up that you have to deal with. Millions of people lost their houses because the banks, they allowed the appraisers to be suborned, meaning that they were influenced to fix the numbers in the loan documents so that they could get way more money than they should have gotten on the loan. And the banks did this so that they could, make more money. And then eventually, when the economy collapsed, they would get the houses back. And if you went into the court and argued that there was all these things that happened, like the loan was separated from the mortgage and separated from the note, and you said, Your Honor, these things, happened, and I was trying to pay my loan and I couldn't because things got messed up, and so you got behind on your payments and it led to a foreclosure. You didn't have any recourse when they took the house, and how many people sat there in the courtroom just shaking their heads, going, "What just happened to me?"
It is amazing.
And that's just one example of the atrocities of the judicial system in this country in modern times. And, one of the things that's really exciting in terms of what we're now looking at, what we're now experiencing an opportunity with, is there is an option. There is an alternative to just the status quo continuing to annihilate us. We literally have an opportunity to, if we want to, if we as individual Americans coming together in a united way, if we want to, we actually have a way to have a better future. We don't have to believe that everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket.
Amen.
We don't have to.
Yep.
But it's going to take a lot of work on our part. It's going to take a lot of mental energy and willingness to, pay a price. But there is at least a path.
Well, what is that saying, that nothing free is, anything worth value is worth work? I can't remember how it goes. It's late in the night. Something, if it's not, if you didn't work for it, then it's you don't deserve it. Something along that line. But yes, I think people have become lackadaisical, put into a position where, again, I talked about instant gratification earlier. They're expecting something like instantly to happen. What we're talking about is something that's more of an investment, a lifelong investment. And there are prices. We have responsibilities. That's something that we don't talk much about in our day-to-day conversations. As quote, citizens, you have responsibilities,
I call it, we have a duty. In fact, it says in the Declaration of Independence that it is your right, it is your duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for your future security. We are now at a point where, it says that we're more prone to suffer while evils are sufferable than to alter the forms to which we're accustomed. We're willing to take the hit. We're willing to, take the brunt of the pain until it gets to the place where enough is enough. And then at that point, it is our right, it is our duty to throw off bad government, resist bad government, restore good government, and renew the country. And if we don't do it, it's our own fault that we get what's coming to us.
I agree.
So, that's really, in my mind, where we're at. We're at a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful pivot point right now. That guy, Steve Huff, that had over 3 million hits on his website when he was talking about what was going on in Virginia, he said we're at a high watermark.
Yeah.
Because they've shown their cards.
Yep. Yep.
I say again, we're in a wonderful place right now, only because we have enough information to fix this. If we can pull together our resources, if we can bring our minds together, in the multitude of counselors there's safety, and we just have to find the people who really want to have a remedy. If there's enough of us, we can win.
And we have the remedy. There is a solution. That's a legal, non-violent solution. To me, that's precious. That's priceless. Because the other option is not so pretty. And I fear that because people are lackadaisical, because so many people really don't understand what a war in the streets would be. They really don't have any idea how treacherous and how just unspeakable that would be. That they're not, you brought up a point a while back, David, about relevance. It's not going to be relevant to them until it's knocking at their door. Then it's going to be too late. It's going to be way too late. That's what we're trying to avoid now. Long before that ever happens, we basically know what is right and wrong. It's not right for a government to force you into anything, whether that is to buy insurance, whether that is to give up your right to defend yourself, whether that is to demand money from your hard earnings. Even that is illegal. But they've gotten away with it for so long, and the perception is that it's okay. But they're going to do this with it. They're going to do this all to help us. And the reality of it is it's really not. You look at how much our country is in debt, and our infrastructure is continuing to fall apart. There's very little to none being done about what's going on within the country. All kinds of money being spent on what's going on outside the country and our military. If this is the kind of thing that you don't agree with, then you join in with what we're talking about and allow us to show you that there's another way. AmericasRemedy.com is where I would start. AmericasRemedy.com. Go there and take a look around, and you'll find more information about what we're talking about this reestablishment, this 14th Amendment that occurred, and what happened during all of that. Imagine if you were living in a small city and your government came in and said, well, the mayor and all of the commissioners are out. We're putting in our people. Well, we didn't vote for them. It doesn't matter whether you voted for them or not. We're putting in our people. Would that seem like America to you? Would that seem like freedom to you? Because that, believe it or not, that kind of paraphrasing, but that kind of thing went on here in the country. And it set forth a system that was corrupt from that point forward. And unless we go back to that and we straighten that out, it's like I say, unless we go back to 9/11 and learn of whatever we can learn, whatever can be learned about the truth about that, we're still going to be living under this lie. Everything that is happening to us today is because of 9/11. If 9/11 was a lie, then everything that is happening to us is undeserved. And that's my belief. We don't deserve a bit of what's going on to us with regard to the National Defense Authorization Act. I love how they give them these wonderful names. The Patriot Act. It's nothing to do with patriots. It's nothing patriotic. It's a direct attack upon us. And it's happened over and over and over again. And I think it's time for the people to rise up and say, you know what, this is not acceptable anymore. And we know your little deceptive secret that you've tried to keep from us, and we're going to straighten it out. And the way to straighten it out is to reestablish our states. I can't tell you more than that because I don't know a whole lot more about it. I'm still learning about it myself. But the fact that it's available, the information is available. David told you, it's documented. We're not making any of this stuff up. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This isn't an idea, some new idea that we're coming up with. This is something that has happened, something that has been documented by the very people who we call our government. So they can't deny it. It's there for us. It's available for you. AmericasRemedy.com. Let me go to Chrissy real quick. Chrissy, we're kind of starting to run down on time. Anything else that you would like to share with us? And by the way, Chrissy, thank you. I know you haven't been feeling well, and it was kind of a sacrifice for you to do this. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. I appreciate you guys letting me speak. I don't have anything else right now, but thank you very much for what I did get to say.
All right, my dear. Well, I wish you well, and you're all over that sickness, right? I hope you're all gone.
I am. I'm doing better.
Good. This thing with the virus that's going around has got a lot of people really afraid, and that's a whole other thing. That again, this is fear mongering. This is if you will consider two basic emotions that humans have. The first one is love, and then the opposite of love. And a lot of people think it's hate, but in reality, hate and love run parallel. The opposite of love is fear. And so if you think about it, what is being promoted more and more and more nowadays? Fear. Be afraid of this. Be afraid of that. Be afraid of the other. And there's really, once you have the knowledge, this is something they can't take from you. The coronavirus, just while we're on the subject, can be killed by hand sanitizer. It's supposed to be dispersed through physical contact. Well, it can be killed by hand sanitizer. There's no need for you to take an injection. It can be killed with Lysol spray. Look on the back of a Lysol spray can. It tells you right on the back of it, coronavirus can be killed with Lysol spray. There's no need for the fear, my friends. There's need for knowledge, and that's what we're trying to spread with you tonight. Chrissy, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. I want to have you back on with an update sometime in the future, and I'll be looking forward to that time.
Definitely. I'd love to be back. Thanks so much.
God bless you, my dear. Be well.
You take care, too.
All righty.
Good night.
All right, Milo, let me come on over to Milo. Milo, anything else you would like to add?
Well, I could talk for another hour or two if I could stay awake that long, and you would indulge me. But I know the show is coming to a close, so no, nothing in particular. I did have a question, actually. A couple of things that you've talked about tonight, and I don't know this, but there's a documentary from like 2004, maybe it was even earlier than that. It was called The Power of Nightmares. I just actually questioned for you. I wondered if you had ever seen it.
No. Now you got my curiosity up. I have to go look it up.
Well, you were talking about fear. You've also talked about 9/11 quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And you also mentioned that, and I didn't know this about you, so there was some respect gained there for that. Not that you had anything to do with where you were born, but being from Egypt, I wasn't even aware, but that's very interesting. But all three of those things and more, they directly relate to that documentary, and I just happened to watch it, years ago when I was in college, and things that have been under discussion some tonight or just mentioned made me think of it, and I was curious if you'd ever seen it. But yes, fear is definitely one of the driving factors that our system today and for decades has used more and more, I think, to try to herd people in a certain direction and manipulate them. So,
what was the name of it,
nice.
Milo? What was the name again?
The Power of Nightmares. I think it was done at least in conjunction with the BBC, but I can't remember if they were solely responsible for it or not.
Okay, I wrote it down so I don't forget it.
But it'll be nice one day when we can overcome our fears.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things to me. I ask people to think for yourselves. If I were someone who was a caring and loving person, would I be perpetuating fear into your life, or would I be perpetuating love into your life? So, and think of what the government is perpetuating into our lives, and the media. So, that right there should tell you who your friends are. It ain't either one of them. All right, my friend. God bless you. Thank you so much for taking the time and staying up and sharing with us.
Not a problem.
I greatly appreciate it. Wish you a great evening.
Well, thank you. Same to you, and I'll go ahead and say goodnight to David as well. You guys, all of you, take care.
Chrissy's still on, so you can say goodnight to her as well.
Oh, okay. Well, good night to Chrissy as well. I'm going to go ahead and get off, guys.
All right, my friend. Thank you,
one.
Milo. Appreciate it. All right, David, we're down to you. Any final thoughts?
Well, I was thinking about Chrissy's comment about her sons and the family and the issue that she raised about the wussification, I think is the term she used, of
I
men.
agree. Yep.
And there's some side benefits of what we're talking about. One of the things that is a key component of a well-regulated militia, besides the fact that they're armed and accoutered and trained and organized, is that they're also disciplined. And discipline in a form of a military structure is a pretty significant way to help men become men. And if you remember, in the day, a man joined the militia at the age of 16. Could you imagine in our society today that where every 16 and 17-year-old young man, or even ladies in our society, would come together into a local organization where adults that understood discipline were training them in how to have discipline. That in and of itself could be a tremendous benefit in our communities. Then you've got the aspect of just creating a more cohesive local community. Because if you're getting together on a regular basis once or twice a month and learning, George Washington called it the military discipline, you're going to be together with people 24 times a year from your local community, from your local precinct, from your local neighborhoods. You're going to get to know your neighbors. So you get the other benefit of actually practicing loving your neighbor. In every society, the principle of loving your neighbor, whether it's the Christian, second greatest commandment, or, you talk about it in virtually every religion has that concept in one way or another. That's a principle that's considered to be a high principle in any society. And we could provide the opportunity for practicing that by knowing, what's going on in our neighborhoods, having a better sense of protection. Neighborhood Watch wouldn't be just some program that people can optionally decide if they want to have in their community. It would be the community. People would know each other. They would, have a better sense of who's around and who's, somebody showing up in the community that isn't somebody they normally see, and would be able to, ask the question, who is this person? And that, not in a negative sense, but getting to know them as people that would be a part of the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got another aspect of this thing I think is vitally important, and that is the whole mindset of Christian virtue and how, we still in this culture do give respect to the Christian worldview. It's being, attacked a lot, but there's still a lot of strong Christian people in our society. The evangelical church is not weak in the sense of it's not deteriorating. It's still got some strength to it. And as people come together in their communities, they're going to talk about their faith. They're going to talk about their relationship. And you're not going to have, if we revitalize the states, you're not going to have this 14th Amendment notion that you can't talk about God in the community.
that whole thing is it's only been around since 1961 or 2 with the O'Hare case, or there's another one, I can't remember the name of the other one, but it's a relatively recent idea. For instance, you're old enough to remember the Blue Laws, Riscala, right?
Yep.
They didn't go away till 1973.
Yep.
Okay, where you didn't generally have a lot of commerce on Sundays. Now, whether that's what we want or not is another question, but the point that actually existed until the 1970s is kind of interesting to think about. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of things that the militia brings to the table that are very positive for society. And, you know, it's something that we should at least be, and what I'm excited about, I'll say it this way, I'm excited about the fact that it is now becoming something people are talking about, whereas even a couple of months ago, talking about it was really considered to be taboo.
Well, there was an effort.
I'm excited.
There was an effort out there to villainize the very word that, militia, shh, that's bad. You know, almost like a curse word. All right, my friend.
Just brought it to the table. It's awesome.
I am ever so grateful for all of the information that you share, and my gosh, probably thousands of hours over a decade of research that you've done into these subjects that we've talked about tonight. I greatly appreciate you having the passion to share that with others, because I really believe that is part of the building blocks of all of this, is to be able to influence other people to the point where they begin to think on their own. Give them the information, let them disseminate it upon themselves, and go, okay. I think an average person, once they see what we're talking about, would come to the same conclusion. It's rightfully mine, and I'd like to have it back. Thank you very much. You know, that's about as simple as I can make it. All right. Well, thank you, guys. I greatly appreciate it. It has truly been an honor and a privilege to have you guys on, and a privilege and an honor to have you guys on the other side of the microphone listening. I do it every Saturday night. I do it because I have this passion that I believe the most important weapon that we can have is knowledge, because they can't take that from you. Once you have that knowledge, they can't zap it out of you like they can sign a piece of paper and then demand that you give them something, whether that's your ability to defend yourself or whether that's literally the earnings from the sweat of your brow. Knowledge can't be dealt with in that fashion. And because of that, it is something that is truly essential as a building block to turning things around. If we're not able to turn things around, if we don't have the knowledge, we're not going to be able to turn things around. If, when we talk about like addiction, if you don't come to the realization that you need help, that's the very first step. And then once you realize that, if you don't come to the realization that you need the knowledge on how to get out of that predicament, then you're doomed. You're going to be stuck in that forever and ever. Well, I think the average person realizes we're in need of help. This is not the way that it should be for us today. I refer to an implosion where I'm watching our government literally implode upon itself. 51 to 49 was the vote on more witnesses for a variety of reasons. But you see how close it is. This is truly a civil war that is happening before our eyes. But it's not the kind that we envisioned growing up where people are shooting at each other. Not yet, anyway. I pray that never happens. But that's what's occurring today. And we have a better way. Again, it's americasremedy.com. I'm not affiliated with them. They don't pay me to say this to you guys. It's important to me that you know this is a place that maybe it's just a starting point for some of you. But I will tell you it's a great starting point if that's what it is. There's a tremendous amount of information there. And it's documented. None of this is theory. None of this is conspiracies. It's just documented stuff by the very people who we call our government. So they can't refute it. It's their documents. They can't say, well, you made this up or blah, blah, blah. It's their documents. There's no way out of it for them. All right. We had it for the evening. I want to thank you again. Thanks to WCET-FM. Thanks to High Point Radio. Thanks to KYAH. Thank you guys for simulcasting. Please make a donation, www.wcetfm.com. Go there and make a donation. Help us do what we do. I love doing what I do. I love being able to get you guys information that's not readily available anywhere else. It's just something that helps give me a fulfillment in my life. Again, I don't get paid to do this. I pay to do it. And I hope that you would help us to continue doing what we're doing. All right. Good night, everybody.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.